We recorded this episode prior to the tragic events that happened in Jacksonville. This news breaks our hearts, and our thoughts and prayers are with the families and communities that are affected by this tragic event. Video games are to bring us together as a community, to make new friends and enjoy the time we get to spend playing games with our friends. This act of violence is not acceptable, nor should it be as common as it is. Our hope is that as a community, we can come up with sound solutions that will keep us safe. And welcome to another episode of Gamerheads. My name is Roger, aka Rogue Leader 76, and with me is my co-host, Christian,
aka Fulgan.
Carrington's not here. He made a promise that he was going to be here and fill in for B until she returns, and oh no, he's not here.
Oh.
Yeah. But he'll return. He said he'll be here next week. And speaking of returning, Ben said he'll be returning.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he's been really busy. He has his own business, and he's been very busy with that. So, yeah. Maybe we can have him talk about his business. It's not game related, but he can mention what he does. So, yeah. So he's been very busy with that, and so that's why he's not here. But he said that once the school year starts, then he'll come back because his kids will be at school, and then he'll have some more time.
Awesome. I haven't had a podcast just with that there, Ben. The last one I was on with him was Video Game Outsiders, and there's just too much going on for me to really have some quality one-on-one mono time with this Ben.
Yeah, and you haven't been on an episode with B yet either, have you?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So, yeah. But you're here, and that's all that matters.
Thank you.
All right, Christian, I have an icebreaker again this week. Every week I'll have an icebreaker. Most times they'll be related to games, but sometimes they will not be. Today is your lucky day because it is related to games.
Yay!
I have an icebreaker when everybody returns, when we get the full cast back.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Be a really good one. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. But this one is today's icebreaker. And what game genre best suits you?
Well, if you know me, Roger, I play many different games, so I can't really, stick myself into one genre and just stay there for a while. I know some people can just play MOBAs for the rest of their lives. I know some people, possibly like the one I'm talking to right now, could play RPGs for the rest of their lives.
That's true.
I can't restrict myself to any one genre. When I was younger, growing up, I used to love RPGs. I used to love grinding and getting my level to get higher and then seeing bigger numbers come out of enemies while I hit them more. And I used to love that. I used to scour the internet for RPGs that I could play, like browser-based RPGs. And these days, I'll play an RPG, but it's a time investment. I don't have that kind of time anymore. Like, I've been playing Yakuza 0 for the past 2 weeks, and I'm still not done with it. It's crazy.
That's kind of RPG-ish.
It is, yeah. It has a lot of JRPG sensibilities with random encounters that pop up and what have you. But I'm a big fan of first-person shooters. I'm a big fan of some open-world games. I love me a good platformer, especially after kind of the platformer drought that we've been having over the past 10 years. But now it's starting to see a little bit more of a resurgence. And I've loved the platformers that have come out, like Super Mario Odyssey, the Crash trilogy. Loved that. I really want to play Hat in Time. That's like a classic platformer, 3D platformer.
Yeah, that's coming to the Switch, dude.
Yeah, I know. That's awesome. That's incredible. I've heard that's a very good game. But yeah, I can't really pick any one genre. What about you, Roger?
I would have to say that the RPGs are my genre. I agree with you. Like, I think now, with having a family and just work, I don't have the time that I used to have when I didn't have responsibilities to just jump into RPGs. But I remember playing Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII and dumping just tons of time into these games, right? And just, spending all this time leveling up our characters and taking on bosses and just even after the game ends, going and doing the, post-game stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I like RPGs is because if you put the time into it, then you can succeed. Like, I don't know if I feel that same way with platformers. I feel like there's times where I'm just like, I can't make it past this part. I'm just not skilled enough as a gamer to make it past this part. But with RPGs, if I run into a boss that I can't beat, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go grind, and then I'm gonna get a strategy, and I'll learn that strategy, and I'll try something different. Where I don't really have that opportunity to do that with platformers or other or first person shooters and stuff like that. I don't know. I would have to say first person shooters are my least favorite game.
Okay.
I like playing like story modes in them, but I don't really like playing online unless it's Splatoon. Splatoon's not really a first person shooter, but you know what I mean. So yeah.
Are Final Fantasy 6 and 7 the RPGs that you hold like nearest and dearest to your heart?
I would say 6 and 7. Yeah, I would say that. And then I would say Chrono Trigger as well. That was a really, really fun game. I remember having lots of fun with that game. Final Fantasy 7, I just remember really grinding to get our breaks leveled up and stuff like that. Just seeing all the different creatures or monsters or whatever that came out of that. It was such a good game.
Yeah. You ever get back on the Final Fantasy train?
I started playing 6 because it was on the Super Nintendo Classic.
Yep.
And I want to go back and play that some more. I just haven't. But I will say that, Octopath Traveler really has kind of brought that back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this game's so good. Yep. It is so good. It is so good.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you're right. I put in like 15 hours already into that game. And it's been, sucking a lot of my time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many JRPGs on my backlog that I just want to set aside the time to get to someday. I'm glad it was within the past couple of years that I actually got through Final Fantasy 6 and Chrono Trigger, but there's still plenty more I want to get through eventually.
Yeah, I know. I have on my backlog, this is so bad, but I have The Witcher 3 on my backlog.
Mm-hmm.
I have to play that. One game that I started playing and I really, really enjoyed was... Boy, I can't remember the name of it now.
You got this. Was it a JRPG?
Kind of, yes.
What consoles?
It's a newer one that's on the Switch now, but it was on PS4.
Come on, Roger. You need to give me more hints than that.
I don't know. I don't remember the name of it. Hold on. No way I can get. Hold on. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, you got this. Switch. It was on PS4. It came to Switch. It's a RPG of some sorts. Possibly a JRPG. I'm not sure he was clear on that point. Maybe he owns it. Maybe he's rifling through his game library right now. He owns so many video games. That's taking him a year to go through them all. I can't even imagine what his Switch home screen looks like. Probably
all right. I got it.
Okay.
Battle Crashers.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't have guessed that one.
Yeah.
Is it good?
Yes. Boy, that was waste of everybody's time.
Battle Crashers.
Yeah. Have you played the game? It's good. It's a good game.
Nope, never played it. Never heard of it.
It's on the Switch as well. So it's actually, I love it. It's a good game. You should play it.
Maybe I'll make a mental note of it, Roger.
So listeners, we'd like to know what type of genre best suits you. Let us know. You can email us. How can they email us?
info@gamerheadspodcast.com.
That's right. Or you can reach us on Twitter at GamerheadsPC or on Facebook
at facebook.com/GamerheadsPodcast.
That's right. All right. So yeah, reach out to us. We want to hear from you. All right, let's go into our Gamerheads News Flash then. I have a couple items here, and as always, if you have more items, please let me know. The first one that I didn't even know about this until recently. The Xbox All Access.
Nice.
This actually could be something that puts Xbox over.
Wow. You heard it here first.
I don't know. So $22 a month for a plan that would get you an Xbox One S, or $35 a month that would get you an Xbox One X, and you would pay that for 2 years, and that would also include the Xbox Live and Game Pass. And then after 2 years, you get to keep the console.
Wow. Well, that's a program for you. You see, Roger, there's something about me, something about the psychology of me where I do not like leasing things. I see them and it seems so attractive. And then I have to tell myself, no, they're making money off me. They're making money off me if I pay this monthly instead of paying it all right away. So I'm going to save the money. So I mean, if I could like choose to like do it for a month and then just quit after that, I think that would be cool. Then I would totally be interested in it. But I'm not going to pay like the equivalent of $800 to own an Xbox One and just have Game Pass the whole time, because I'm so steeped in the PlayStation ecosystem at this point, and I've got a gaming PC that I can play any Windows or Windows 10 games. So any Xbox exclusives from here into the foreseeable future are runnable on my PC. So there's not a huge incentive for me to pick this up unless I just own one. I mean, the main thing that entices me about an Xbox One S or the X even is that it has a 4K Blu-ray drive, because the PS4 Pro does not have that for some unknown reason. It's absolutely ridiculous. And also the backwards compatibility is really awesome. And that is currently the best place to play Red Dead Redemption 1, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's true. No, I see what you're saying. Do you own a cell phone?
Yes.
Do you pay a monthly fee for that?
No.
You don't?
No, I only pay service. I did not lease my phone.
Oh, good job. Good for you. The reason I asked that is because I think that's the model they're going for, is this whole, right, the cell phone model.
Yeah.
And I think that this would go well for parents that want to get their kids something and then just pay, like, oh, well, $22 a month. Really, $22 a month. I know what you're saying is like you're paying a lot more than that for the whole machine over 2 years, right? You're paying more than you would than if you just paid it up front.
Yeah.
But $22 a month, I think that can really, I think that families that, have a budget that, like myself, that, we're looking to budget things, $20 a month, I think, is something that I could say, oh yeah, I can swing that,
Yeah.
No
yeah.
problem.
There's people whose economic situation would definitely be better for something like that, like a monthly fee. And I think they're trying a lot of cool stuff, Microsoft is, with their Xbox brand and trying to push it and being able to kind of grab back some of that market share that they had for the 360. And I mean, this is another pretty cool program that gives consumers a lot more options. And and getting an Xbox with, I assume, Gold, I think this comes with Gold. Is that right, Roger?
Gold and Game Pass.
Gold and Game Pass. Yeah. So you've got a pretty sizable library there to dig into as well. So, I mean, if you don't have video games and you want a console and a bunch of games to boot, this would be a great way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, because the Game Pass itself, it's like Netflix, where you can, they have, lots of games on there, and then you can just, download the ones you want to play. As long as they're there and available, you can download them and play them. And then all their console exclusives will be available day one. So I think this is and it's only available in America right now. I should say the US. So that's really interesting. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't know in this area. So it's certainly going to be at Microsoft stores, and I don't know a Microsoft store in this area. Is there one in Madison?
There might be in like a mall or something.
Yeah, I know there's Apple stores, but I don't know Microsoft. But then possibly retailers will offer this as well. But they didn't really elaborate that as well. So
yeah. We'll have to wait and see. It seems very interesting.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah, different approach for sure. This isn't, well, not interesting. This is not shocking, I should say. There will not be a new Assassin's Creed next year. Oh no.
Really?
I know. So they'll be offering more content for Odyssey, not Mario Odyssey.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I remember seeing that and just immediately thinking Mario Odyssey. That's
I know. They had two different studios make Assassin's Creed Origins and Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Mhm.
So that's why they were able to release both games pretty close to each other.
Yep.
So they said that they will not have a new game next year, but they will have new content for Odyssey. So that's cool. I mean, I like the fact that they're going to support, obviously, the game that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. It seems like they're almost kind of adopting a different release model that we kind of haven't seen out of AAA titles before to some extent. I mean, Call of Duty would do like 2 releases, one per studio in 2 years, but they would continue that cycle. Whereas here, they're doing 2 releases a year off, and then I'd assume at least 1 release, possibly 2. I think that's interesting. Like I mentioned in an earlier podcast, after 100%ing Assassin's Creed Origins, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is not something that exactly appeals to me when I see gameplay footage of it or anything like that. But once the time comes that it starts going on sale for like $30, $25 or what have you, I think that I might be in the mood for something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I still have Origins to play through, so.
yeah, that's a good time, Roger. I'd recommend it. But you did mention that the Greek mythology is more up your alley.
Yeah, it is. And I'm starting to wonder how many Assassin's Creeds are there going to be? I mean, like eventually they're going to run out, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot at this point. Yeah, just looking back, it's crazy to think about. Yeah,
well, and I didn't realize how many games there were that I didn't even play, like the Assassin's Creed India, which was like the 2.5D version.
Yeah,
that was weird.
Yeah, they made like 3 of those, one in Russia, one in China.
Yeah. One in China, one in Russia, and one in India, I think. Mm-hmm. So, and then they had Assassin's Creed on the DS.
Yeah, they did. They had one on the PSP that I played back in the day because it was the only way I could play Assassin's Creed.
Crazy.
Yeah, but I played most of the main entries.
Yeah.
I think all of the main entries except for Rogue.
I don't have Rogue, but I have them all because there was a sale going on.
Nice.
It was a humble bundle sale. That was
cool.
On, so, yeah. Well, this is interesting, and this is not a shocker, because I always felt this way. According to the rare devs of GoldenEye, playing as Oddjob is cheating.
This is good. We all know it, Roger. We all know that playing as Oddjob is not as fair because the game was not built for such a thing, for aiming down at a shorter character. It's not built that way.
That's right.
I feel like it's an unspoken rule of law that everyone understands. You do not pick Oddjob unless you have a handicap of some sort.
Yeah, and that's actually what I read in the article, that the developers said that the reason they kept him in is because house rules will rule, right?
yeah, exactly.
And you decide what's fair and what's not fair. But what was interesting that I didn't know, that the multiplayer was not going to happen in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
And it was like, a couple months before releasing this game that they decided to put 2 devs on multiplayer and say, do what you can. Right. And this was not even told to Nintendo yet. Mm-hmm. It was like, just do what you can. And if it comes out, great. If not, whatever. Isn't that crazy to think that may have not been added to the game? Yeah.
It's always crazy seeing how split-second decisions like that can pretty much change the gaming landscape like GoldenEye multiplayer did.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I was not good at GoldenEye, but I remember that was a huge game in college that everybody would go into somebody's dorm room and we would all play GoldenEye. It was fun.
Yeah, I think in the world of like online gaming, there's like weird characters and like house rules or something that's kind of going away because balance is very heavily emphasized, especially in fighting games. But one game that's still has kind of like an unspoken house rule that I find really fascinating is Counter-Strike. It's kind of had this unspoken rule for like the past 10 years in which there's a sniper rifle in the game, and it's the most expensive sniper rifle, and it's also a semi-automatic sniper rifle, so it is very easy to get kills with it. And if you get it, you pretty much, it's hilarious because you get it as soon as one person hears the shot from the automatic sniper rifle. Everyone else buys one. You just crossed a line, and then the whole game devolves into a sniping match after that point.
Oh, crazy.
It's wonderful.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, that yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And the last piece that I have, I know that there was some stuff you wanted to talk about, Christian, but
Yeah.
the last one that I had was Twitch will be streaming Pokemon, all 900 plus episodes, starting on the 27th of August. And that will be on Monday through Thursdays, and then Fridays and Saturdays will be reserved for reruns, and then Sundays will be reserved for the movies. And because there's 900 plus episodes, this will go well into 2019.
Jeez, that's insane. Is this some kind of like officially licensed Nintendo thing?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know. That's what I was wondering. How can Twitch do this? But maybe. I mean, I don't see how they couldn't do it without getting some kind of approval.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize this isn't their first like marathon. They would show like 80s TV shows and I guess what was that? The painting, Bob
Ross.
Yes. They did marathon of his and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as well.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought. Because it's different, right? Then now you have something streaming, and then you have people interacting.
Yeah.
I think that's what they should do with sports, actually.
Oh yeah.
Like that would be such a different perspective with sports, but I don't know, whatever. I mean, I know that esports is trying to do that, but it would be really interesting to see like NFL games where they're streaming and then. Or movies or Netflix. Man, Netflix would totally jump on this. Just have all their movies there and then be able to have people like, have some kind of chat. I don't know. It's an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know, something about it just being a Twitch stream and just being able to pop in and just be there as part of this kind of event that's happening just makes it seem cool to me. Because I mean, this isn't any different than like a new episode of a TV show airing and like everyone's watching it at the same time. But the difference is that there's a chat there and you can see all the other people that are also there watching it with you. And then it's just continuously going. So you can pop in, pop out at any time. It's just weird. People can do some really cool stuff and have been doing some cool stuff with Twitch. Like Twitch Plays Pokemon. That's another thing that's really cool. People are finding cool stuff to do with it.
Yeah. And I guess there's going to be like, badges that you can get in this as well.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So it'd be kind of cool. And there would be some kind of leaderboard, I guess that's what they're saying. But that's one thing that it is kind of weird. Like I'll sometimes just go on Twitch to see who's playing. There's always somebody playing, right? At some time at night or during the day or in the early in the morning, right? Like sometimes I get up on the weekends at like 5:00 and just go see who's streaming. And I'm like, oh my God, there's people actually streaming at 5:00 in the morning. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of cool. It just, I don't know. It feels like you're connected somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. And you see like all kinds of different people there. Like yesterday I popped on Twitch and then there's like just this dude watching professionals play chess and commenting on the moves that they were making. And I was like, wow, I don't understand any of this, but it's really fascinating.
Yeah. And in fact, you know about Stevens Point Trivia, right?
No, I do. Oh, yes, I do. It's pretty big. Yeah. The radio that runs the trivia.
The radio. Yeah. Do you play that, by the way?
I never have, no.
Oh, you're going to play this year. But they streamed that for the first time on Twitch this year. And it was weird.
Really?
They said don't give answers because that's the thing. Like they can't give answers on the chat. But it was interesting to see people like interacting and I mean, one thing that I like the stream fact is that, I don't really get the radio station out here really well, so I can stream it.
Yeah.
But it was weird to see like, again, that's 54 hours straight of trivia.
Jeez.
It was just weird to see that going on. I don't know. It just feels like you're connected. Like it's just kind of weird. It's just connected. It's kind of cool, but kind of weird too. I don't know.
Yeah, that connected is a good word for it.
That's all I had, Christian. I know you had some items that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mentioned to you that a couple days ago, NVIDIA had a live stream and a press event for their new graphics cards. They unveiled their new consumer line of graphics cards. Do you know much about graphics cards, Roger? Tell me.
I know that they help you play games. I don't know anything about graphic cards at all. Yeah, I nailed it.
Yeah. Well, graphics cards help you play games, Roger. You nailed it.
Yes,
they
thanks.
are things
that was a terrible description. Sorry.
No, that's okay. They tend to be very expensive. They're things that you put in your computer.
They're very expensive.
Yeah.
You put them in your computer.
Exactly. Jeez, Roger, you're just firing on all cylinders today.
I'm sorry, I'm plagiarizing you. Go ahead.
Oh, nice. They're very large, and they run games very well if you have the money to shell out for a good one. So in the console gaming space, a lot of us are used to that 30 frames per second mark, and for some people, it just doesn't cut it. And so that's why people will spend $800, $1,000 on a graphics card. And that's just the graphics part of things. You still have to shell out like hundreds of dollars for everything else in your computer, but some people are crazy, and these graphics cards are for crazy people because they start at $500 and go up to $1,200. So they're very expensive, but it's very interesting. The presentation, I don't think, was very well done. The presenter did a lot of repeating himself, and kind of the general like structure of the presentation and kind of the language they were using was very technical. And as someone who took a computer graphics course, I actually understood a decent amount of it, but still some of it went just completely over my head, and I can tell that that was not kind of language for the average consumer. But that's why we have news outlets these days. They'll just distill everything down to the need to knows and then get it to you. But the conference was okay. They didn't do an amazing job at really like showing how these graphics cards stack up to the previous generation. The current graphics cards are called the 1000 series. Do you know about this, Roger?
I do not.
Okay.
I would assume that they are the first generation.
No, that is incorrect.
I mean, they're the 1000th generation?
Yeah, you got it. So I have a 980, okay? I'm going to give you a quick crash course in graphics cards.
Wait, seriously, is this really, I mean, this is going to sound really, I'm not a computer gamer at all. But, I mean, do they go by hundreds? I'm assuming they go by hundreds, right?
Every graphics card is different. So there's the two big names. There's NVIDIA and AMD. And NVIDIA kind of has had a monopoly on the high-end graphics market for a while now, while AMD has remained a pretty good budget option. But I believe AMD is in their 500 series. So they were in 300s for a while, and then they made it to 400s, and now they're in the 500s. And I think like the 580 is like the high end of things. So their naming scheme has like began to mirror NVIDIA's naming scheme, because in NVIDIA they'll do like their series in hundreds. So they had a 500 series, 600 series, 700 series, 800 series, and both of these are usually marked by like 2-year increments. So you'll have 2 years before the next generation comes out, and that's the next 100 series. And right now in my machine I only have a 980. And so basically the first digit is the series, and then the second digit is kind of where the card fits in within that series. So you've got like 980 is like the highest of the series, or highest of that series to some extent. And then they'll have like one that's a little bit better, which is a 980 Ti, which is like 980 plus a little bit more. So there's a 980, 970, 960, 950, and it'll just keep going down that way. And then the most recent cards are called 1000 series. So there was a 1080, which was really confusing because 1080 is also a resolution. So that's like 1080p. That's confusing. And then for the next series of cards, this next series, they didn't go to the 1100 series like everyone assumed they would. They went to the 2000 series. Instead of GTX cards, because all of them have been called GTX 980, GTX 1080. Now it's an RTX 2080. It's confusing. It doesn't make any sense. They just name these things and charge $1,200 for them, and people buy them.
Jeez.
But what's really interesting about these next cards is that they're not so much a step forward, so much as they're kind of like a side step. Because in the past few generations of graphics cards, I mean, pretty much every generation until now, they basically crammed more chips and what have you onto a single graphics card. And there's been a lot of charts of like, this one is 30% better than this one and will run games 30% better. And this one's 30% better. Whereas these cards, they're harnessing a different technology called ray tracing, which is a very complex way of like rendering graphics. So the lowdown on graphics rendering is that everything is a triangle. And so these triangles are very, very teeny and very, very small. And graphics cards are specifically designed for conducting a lot of calculations with triangles in parallel at the same time and very quickly. So that's why we're able to see these real-time images happening at like 60 times a second, because the graphics cards are making these calculations so ridiculously fast. But a different way of rendering graphics is ray tracing, where instead of rendering triangles and faking the way light hits the triangles, ray tracing works in that it traces or it tracks a ray of light and how it bounces around and then how it reaches the human eye. And because of that, it's way more accurate and way more lifelike than something like just triangles and faking things. So they're focusing on this ray tracing with these set of graphics cards this time around. And that allows them to do a lot of things that they couldn't initially do because they had to fake a bunch of things. So like realistic shadows are something that you had to do a lot of faking. Whereas with ray tracing, you can get real life shadows that actually mimic real life because the ray tracing is simulating what real light works like. And instead of reflections that are very fake, do you ever notice reflections in video games very often, Roger?
I do.
You do?
I do. Yeah.
What are some examples?
Reflections in video games?
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe not reflections. I just like light a reflection off of water. Like that's the biggest thing that I think of. Like when I think of like games, like I don't PC game, but when I play games like, like Octopath, right? And they have like the water and then the lights reflecting off of it. I was like, oh, that looks so gorgeous. And a Gorilla's game. What was that?
Horizon Zero Dawn?
Yeah. Just how gorgeous that game looks, and a lot of it has to do with the reflection of the water. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but that's what I consider reflections, I guess.
Yeah. So in video games, it kind of began standing out to me after I took my computer graphics class was that reflecting things is extremely performance intensive. Because there's a lot of tricks that you can do, but if you want an actual reflection of whatever's on the other side of that reflective surface, it is incredibly expensive from a hardware standpoint, because your video game camera is showing a certain segment of the world. And then if you look at a reflection, the reflection has to be showing an entirely different segment of the world. And all of that has to be rendered. And so all of that will take up a lot of performance. And so I find it really interesting kind of seeing the different tricks that developers will play using reflections. Like I was playing around a Fortnite and there's like bumpers on these semis that are reflective. And so I was curious. I walked over to it and I'm like, oh, they have a reflection here. I'm going to see what it looks like. And it was funny because it's not a reflection at all. All it is like a copy of your behind the back view of your person, just copied and pasted onto the silver surface. So you're looking in the reflection and seeing your back. That's not how that works. But if you're just playing a fast-paced game like Fortnite, you're not really going to notice. But it's really fascinating seeing like the different tricks that they come up with. Whereas with this ray tracing, they've come up with hardware that's able to do these calculations in real time and parallelized all at once so that reflections can look really good and they can be very accurate. And there was a Battlefield 5 demo that they showed off, which was definitely the most impressive because it kind of showed how amazing things can look when there's reflections in the world that are actually true to life. So you've got like cars that are reflecting fire that's being shot out of a tank, or you'll be walking across a puddle and you'll be able to see a plane that's flying overhead. Whereas usually in a game, all it'll reflect is just like light that's bouncing from the sun. And that's just kind of how we're used to reflections in video games. And I think that this is going to cause like an interesting evolution in video game visuals, not in more pixels, not in necessarily we're going to get 4K everything, not necessarily we're going to get 60 frames per second 4K everything. That's not going to happen yet with how slowly things are moving along. But I think this is a very interesting sidestep in that we're going to see more reflections in games and more accurate shadows, and the general image quality is going to be really cool. And I think that from a mechanics standpoint, they can do things with reflections in video games that we just haven't been able to do in the past. With things like a horror game, for example, you could make an entire horror game that's based around reflections and seeing things in reflections that you can't see with your own eyes and kind of like relying off of that, or just using like reflections to your general advantage, or just seeing reflections in a world makes things appear so much more lifelike. And it's really cool. These graphics cards are early, so this whole ray tracing thing is not something that other companies have developed techniques for. This is an NVIDIA thing in particular. And so because of that, we're not going to be seeing that in a lot of games. And we're not going to be seeing that in console games, at least not for 2 generations. But I think in like 15 years, once this tech begins making its way onto the console space, we're going to be seeing some visuals that are really awesome.
So a couple questions with that.
Absolutely.
The first one being, so you're saying how like
Battlefield 5?
Battlefield 5.
Yeah.
Not Battlefront 5, Battlefield 5. So like how does that work though? Like if the developer, I mean, this is again my lack of knowledge. This is why I like having you on the podcast, because you're like the Mr. Spock to my Captain Kirk, if you will.
No, I think you got a good question here, Roger.
But how does that work where it's reflecting like an airplane if the developer didn't build it out that way? Like how can they build that and then this graphic card enhance that if that was not something that they even thought of building? I don't understand that.
Yeah. So that's a good point where these developers, they kind of have to make these things with ray tracing in mind. So they can't just, like you're saying, they can't just flip a switch and all of a sudden reflections are happening everywhere. I think their engine was kind of already in a place where reflections were happening in a limited sense. And since they had the hardware to do it, I think the hardware capabilities of these new RTX cards allows them to much more quickly, at least, be able to say, okay, this surface is reflective. So anything, the way that ray tracing works is that it just works in that you like point it and say, okay, this surface is reflective, and this is where like you point, this is where the reflection is going to point. And then like ray tracing will just take care of the rest. It'll be like, okay, if this is where it's going to point, this is what you're going to see when you look at the reflection. And they made it sound like they pulled this off. They pulled those reflections off in a very short amount of time. So not a lot of people have had their hands on this hardware. And that's why the Battlefront 5, Battlefield 5, gosh dang it, those are terrible names to get mixed up.
I know.
I get it mixed up all the time too. Battlefield 5, that's why the demo was so impressive. The Shadow of the Tomb Raider one was less impressive because they were focusing on shadows, and on a stream you couldn't really tell the difference. And that's kind of like when the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X were coming out and they're like 4K, check it out, and you're watching it on a stream and you're like, okay, I don't see any difference. Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, I think this bodes well for 15 years in the future. Not as of yet. Don't go out and spend $1,200 on a graphics card yet, but maybe in 10 years you'll want to.
My second question is this going to help with mining Bitcoins?
You know, Roger, we had a good long text chat about Bitcoins.
We did. And I still don't understand it.
Yeah. I certainly hope not. I hope the Bitcoin craze dies. I know that it's slowly deteriorating, the Bitcoin market is. And so you're actually able to purchase graphics cards for a reasonable price these days. And I want to say that this does not help Bitcoin performance. There might be certain Bitcoins that are going to take advantage of these ray tracing capabilities. I pray to God that that's not what's going to happen. But yeah, I don't think that it'll be much better in that sense. And that's another interesting point, is that they were talking about ray tracing and these new methods and they didn't talk so much at how much better these cards were than the last ones. They did in the sense that it's better at ray tracing, which no duh, because these cards were built for ray tracing. And so they made it sound ridiculous. Like, these cards are 10 times better than $60,000 of graphics cards. It's like, okay, yeah, that's nice. That's marketing speak. I can see right through this.
Yeah.
Where I think that's kind of where the ridiculous price of some of the cards comes from, like the $1,200 for the 2080 Ti. I think that's because not only does it have these ray tracing capabilities, but they also had to like cram more performance into that card for games that don't use the ray tracing. So I think that's why they really bumped up the prices.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Like you said, I'm hoping that tech comes down in price, and then 15 years from now we can see that. It's crazy. It's crazy to think like how things are evolving, especially since my days of playing, Pong. I started with Pong. That was my first system I ever played was Pong. So it's cool. It's fun. All right. So we don't have any listener feedback, but this week. But if you do want to get a hold of us, please send us an email at info@gamerheadspodcast.com. You can go on Twitter at GamerheadsPC, send us a message there, or you can go on Facebook.com/Gamerheads podcast as well. So later on in the show, I should have mentioned this earlier, we do have an interview coming up here. But before we go into the interview, let's talk about the games that we are currently playing.
Yeah.
So what games are you playing?
Well, Roger, I'm still playing Dead Cells. I'm still loving it. Still chipping away at it a little bit every day. That's last podcast we talked about good games to unwind to, and I feel like that's a really good one for me to unwind to. It's just
really,
yeah, it's just got this nice rhythm. I mean, it's frustrating, yeah, but I mean, I've kind of gotten good at not being frustrated by video games. I think Dark Souls kind of conditioned me to be more patient, be more okay with the punishment that video games send my way. And so, like, there's just something comforting for me about just doing a couple Dead Cells runs.
Nice.
It's nice.
Anything else? Are you playing anything else?
Yeah,
I know this is a short week. It feels like a short week at least.
Yeah. Since I was playing some Dead Cells, I have Enter the Gungeon on Switch. And so I had that with me, and I've played it a little bit in the past, and I think I mentioned before, and it's in my Dead Cells review, that that's one of the many roguelites I've tried, and it just didn't capture my attention all that much. But I've heard great things about that game from a lot of people, and I believe there's a patch pretty recently that added a little more content, so I figured I'd give it another go, try it out a little bit. And I'm still not able to get into it. I can definitely see the appeal of it. I can see what people enjoy about it. It's got a uniqueness to it. It's like a top-down shooter, and there's a big emphasis on the weapons that you pick up as you go along. And so you're shooting a bunch of bullets. The enemies are bullets. And it's this cute aesthetic because it's all based on guns and bullets because it's Enter the Gungeon. And you're collecting weapons as you go along, collecting currency. You've got the roguelike rhythm, but it's just Dead Cells is so good. Once I played Dead Cells, it's so hard to go back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just had a laugh that you said it's relaxing, and I 100% agree with that because that's actually usually the game that I pick up right before I go to sleep. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a quick run on Dead Cells. It just made me laugh because I told you this already, but tell the listeners this. I was playing a run and I made it to the door to get out of the level that I was on and go into the area where I can actually collect or deposit my cells or use my cells. Yeah. I had 21 cells on me. I had a little health left, and there's a treasure chest right next to the door. And of course, I'm like, cool, I'm opening it. Yeah. And I don't know, 8 or 9 bad guys jumped out. All these little bats and these zombies came out, and I died. And I was so frustrated. I'm like, yep, I'm going to bed.
Yeah. There have been many Dark Souls experiences that have been very similar to that, Roger.
Yeah. I had a good
build going on.
Setup. Yeah, I did. I had my wolf traps, which I love, and then I had these double knife things where you throw them down and they shoot, Yeah. So I would especially in the toxic dungeon or toxic sewers,
Mm-hmm.
those scorpions that come out, man, that was great. You throw one of those down, and
Yeah.
then one of those comes out, and then you could, it would take it out. I was so disappointed. I had such a good run going on, and then I died, and I was like, oh, come on, man.
I'm so sorry, Roger.
But it's fun. I love that game. It's really fun.
That's good. I enjoy it too. There's one other game I'm playing a little bit more of. I'm continuing on the Yakuza 0 grind. I'm trying my darndest. I've only gotten like another 10 hours into it, so I'm roughly like 22 hours in, and it's still going. I think I'm about 2/3 of the way through. Hopefully I'll have it done by next week. I want to have it done by next week. But I'm still really enjoying it. When I said my initial impressions last podcast, the combat was not my favorite part about it, and kind of that's definitely held true. The combat doesn't really flesh itself out all that much. I don't know if that's because I haven't gone to like the people to upgrade my combat abilities or whatever, but I don't think that's the case. The combat, it's just really, you know what you got to do. You do the punches, you do the kicks, and then you do the special move. And the combat for me has just largely been the same. It's been punch, 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 kick. They get knocked on the ground, and then I use my power move while they're on the ground. And it's been the same way since like the first couple hours of the game. The combat kind of hasn't really evolved or gotten into a better place. But it's probably the weakest part of the game. I still think that it's good. It's at the very least good because it's very kinetic. It feels good to be punching these people, and like I said, watching the spit and blood fly out while you're like putting your silver-toed boot into their face. Really satisfying stuff. And there's money that flies out of them. So this game takes place in the 80s in Japan. So I guess this was like a point in time where the economy was doing really well. So everyone was just like loaded and full of cash. So like as you like punch someone, money just flies out and you see the money rack up. And getting used to money values in yen is something that I'm still getting kind of accustomed to. I think at this point I'm kind of used to it. But at first it was weird because they don't have cents. It's all just yen. And so like 100 yen is like $1, I think. And so you're seeing these numbers that are like in the millions of yen. And I'm like, oh, I'm a millionaire. And I'm like, wait, this is yen. This isn't US dollars. I got to calm down. But there's money everywhere. Like they play into the setting really well in that you get a lot of money, and like you can stop in shops and what have you, and there's like eateries that you can stop in, and you always have like copious amounts of money, so you can just waltz into a restaurant, buy a thing of food and heal up, and it looks delicious, and then your guy eats it, and then it like doesn't even put a dent in your wallet. There's like so few games that are like that, where they want to make like every item you buy feel like impactful on your wallet, whereas here you're just running around buying stuff willy-nilly. I loaded up my my inventory with healing items, and like it costed me like next to nothing. It didn't even put a dent in my wallet. It's really weird that way. I like it though. And it's like I mentioned before, it's really steeped in the setting. Like you go into a room, and in people's like apartments, they have a coffee table, but there's no chairs around the coffee table or anything. People just sit on the floor. People in Japan, I guess, just sit on the floor. Is this true, Roger?
I've never been to Japan, so I can't say for sure.
Okay.
But that sounds right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's my brother, actually. He lives in Japan.
Oh, really? Holy cow. Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, we do have Japanese listeners, actually. So if you are in Japan and you're listening, let us know. Is that true?
That's awesome. But yeah, I'm still really enjoying Yakuza 0. The gameplay, as far as the combat is concerned, is probably the weakest part. But all of the rest of the gameplay is really good. You've got lots of mini games that you can do. You can bowl. You can do everything. You can hit a baseball around in like this baseball cage. You can play a crane game called UFO Catcher or something like that. You can walk into a Sega arcade and play full arcade versions of Space Harrier. And what's the car driving one? Outrun, that's the one. You can play full arcade versions of Outrun. They look and sound great. They play great. And that's just so awesome. You don't see that in games anymore. They put classic games in their games, but then they just use it as like an ad to make you like try and buy the game for real. Whereas here they put the whole game in there. That's so awesome. Crazy. And there's like these like meta games that are happening where one's where you're running a club, and so you like collect like employees for your club and you level them up. And then there's another one where you're like a real estate mogul and you're going around buying properties and leveling your properties up and watching your bank account inflate. There's just so much going on with this game. It's crazy. I'm really loving the story still, and I'm excited to see how it ends.
Have you played Sleeping Dogs at all?
Yes, I have. I finished Sleeping Dogs on the PS3 back in the day.
How does the fight mechanic compare to Sleeping Dogs?
Yeah, it's a little similar. Sleeping Dogs is a bit. You had guns in Sleeping Dogs, right? You still had guns?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a little more emphasis on the gunplay, I think, in Sleeping Dogs. But Sleeping Dogs, I think, did a really good job with that stuff as well, with the melee stuff and continuously unlocking more abilities. So I think on that end of things, I think Sleeping Dogs definitely had a better fleshed out combat. But as far as the open world is concerned, Sleeping Dogs was much more traditional in the open world sense, whereas you had this bigger world and you did a lot of driving from A to B, whereas Yakuza 0 is much more focused and smaller in scale, where you're just running from point A to B. And the cities are very bustling, and the side stuff is very different too. So I like them both for different reasons. I think Yakuza 0's story is what's keeping me coming back to it and why I love it so much right now.
Yeah, I heard it's good. I picked it up. I had to play it.
Yeah,
I haven't played it yet. So
yeah, it's a good time investment. Just like the opening, just getting through the opening alone will take you like 2-3 hours maybe.
Holy cow! Really?
Yeah, just get in and kind of like experience. That's the hard thing for me with RPGs is if I just play it for like an hour or 2 hours, that's like such a small slice of the game that I find it easy to just fall off during those initial hours. Whereas when I put in like 6 or 7 hours, that's where I'm getting to the point where I start getting invested. And that's when I actually have the drive to see everything through to the end. And I get really invested.
Yeah. I think my problem with RPGs is the fact that I'll put all this time in and then I'll go away from the game for a while and I come back and I'm like,
that's hard.
Oh crap.
That's hard.
What was I doing? Yeah. Like, I don't know where I was. I feel like I should start over.
Oh no.
That happened to be with oh my gosh, with Golden Sun, the very first Golden Sun. I made it so far in that game, and then I put it down and I came back and I'm like, oh no. God, I don't remember anything in this game because it was on my Game Boy Advance, and I played it a lot when I had the Game Boy Advance, and then I moved down to other stuff, and then I picked it up. I'm like, oh yeah, Golden Sun,
yeah,
great,
yeah.
And then I picked it up. I'm like, oh no, I'm really far, but I don't remember where I was. So, yeah, that's my problem with RPGs.
Yeah, that's something that I've experienced a lot in the past too, where I'll put it down and then I've tried to learn from my mistakes. Where if I start a story-based game or a long JRPG or a long game like a Yakuza 0, I'll try and make sure I see it through to the end before I do anything else or play anything else. So that's why I've only let myself play Dead Cells in Yakuza 0. I haven't gotten deep into anything else yet because I find that Fallout games in particular are games where I'll play them a lot. In like Bethesda games, I'll play them a lot at first, and then I'll be kind of scared to get back to them just because the inventory management is crazy. Like I won't know what weapons I was holding on to and for what reason. And I know I'm just going to spend like the first hour of my revisitation with the game just going through my inventory.
Yeah, agreed.
But what have you been playing, Roger?
Just more Dead Cells and more Octopath, really.
Yeah.
That's all I've been playing. Well, I've been playing Galak-Z though too. I that game keeps me coming back.
Yeah,
I love that game. I do. I love that game. They have they have these bots, so you can collect these bots. You can buy these bots.
Mm-hmm.
You can use. It's all in-game coins, but then you can buy these in-game coins too. But there's no reason to.
Yeah.
Because if you log in every day, you get a login bonus, and you get like 10 of these bot chips, and then if you get 90 of them, then you can buy a new robot.
Oh, cool.
And then these robots give you perks on your machines and stuff like that, on your mechs, on your mech or your spaceship, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's aspects of leveling with this game too, where like there's different relics that you have to go get. So even if you beat the level, you can keep collecting these relics, and then they unlock different weapons or shields, or even coats of paint, and then you get to collect so many of them to get that boost.
Okay.
So like there'll be times where I'll have to go through these levels several times just to get all the relics, all these dark relics that I'm looking for to unlock it. And then finally, when you unlock all the pieces for that level, then you don't have to go back. It like marks it that you can't actually go back and get those again. So.
I see.
But I'm really enjoying that game. You know, that is the aspect. It's kind of loot boxy in the fact that you don't know what kind of bot you're going to get. So you pay these 90 coins or these, 90 bot bits, I think they're called. And then you get a bot, and they could be either like ultra rare, or common. And I have a couple rares, but I've never gotten like one of these elites. I think that's what they're called, elites. Never gotten an elite. I got a lot of commons. And then you can use your common ones though, and then use those to boost up your rares or your elites that you have.
I see. I was watching you stream some of it on the Twitch channel, and it looks like they do a really good job at like putting you on a good treadmill and continuing to motivate you to want to keep on doing the next thing, and good at putting that carrot at the end of the stick. Yeah.
The stream, it was a little slow, but but the crazy thing is like you can do so much in that game. You can either play through the story, you can do bot battles. So you can do those and get relic points for those and unlock like pieces for your ships. Or you can sometimes they'll have what's called black holes, and they'll have black hole events, and then or wormhole events, and then you play in those, and you can unlock different relics and more powerful bots and more powerful relics that you can unlock. So that's cool. I'm not good at. I've competed in a wormhole.
Yeah, you mentioned
a wormhole
that.
event, and I didn't do it. But I died. But it's a fun game. It's free on the Switch.
Yeah.
It's actually free on mobile too, but it's free on the Switch. It plays really well on the Switch, I think. And I don't know, it just scratches that itch of just, this is a cool like mech spaceship game. It's like top down, and it's all hand drawn too. It's kind of cool.
Do you need a persistent online connection to continue playing this, Roger? It sounds like you do.
I think you do.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't know how they can. Well, you wouldn't be able to. I don't think you'd be able to play the bot battles without online.
I see. I gotcha.
So you're competing against other bots. So other people's bots. So you create an army, if you will, or whatever of 3 bots, and then you put them out there, and then people will try to take out your bots with their mechs, and then if your bots win, then you get points. And when I log in, it's like, your bots defeated so many people, you get so many points. So I'm like, yay bots, good job.
Yay bots.
And then go bots go, and then we'll fight against other people's bots. So it's like you're competing against other people, but it's really just more of like you're competing against their bots that they put out there. You're not actually playing against anybody.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. That's kind of par for the course in the mobile game world, I think.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, no, it's fun.
Have you ever played match 3 games like Bejeweled before? Anything? Like
I have. Yeah.
There was a PS Vita game back in the day, so I had a PS Vita close to launch, and there was like a game on there that was a match 3 game, and it was free to play. And it was weird because it was like one of these mobile games that was just on the Vita, and it was kind of new for the time, and I found it fascinating. And it was one of these match 3 games. That's all it was. And you had like lives in the what is it, Candy Crush sense, where you would like I think every time you played, it would use a life, and then when you ran out of lives, you had to wait for them to refill back up. But what I found really cool about it was that you didn't need an online connection to just play it. So I just would pop it on, match 3 a bunch of times, try to climb my way up the leaderboard, and then be done for the day.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think those games, they psychologically get me. They get me psychologically because they make you wait, and then they make you come back after a little bit when the game feels more satisfying after you've been away from it for a little bit.
Yeah.
They're like crack.
Yeah, kind of. So I've been playing that. So I know I was going to say, I know I wanted to play God of War. I have not played it yet. I've been so busy with everything else that's been going on in my life, on top of doing podcast duties.
Mhm.
So so I haven't played it yet, but I do plan on playing it. I will play it probably this weekend. So
Yeah, take your time. I think that's another good game where the best way to experience it out the gate is to set aside a few hours to really get yourself knee deep in what's going on there.
yeah, agreed. All right, well then let's do this. Let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll go into our interview with Patrick, and stay tuned for that.
Hi, this is Michelle Madison from the Video Game Outsiders podcast. We've been churning out stupidity and gaming since 2004, and we would love for you to check us out. So visit videogameoutsiders.com for more information or find us anywhere podcasts are available.
Hey, it's Carrington from Real Dudes Podcast, and with me I have some fantastic co-hosts. Guys, why don't you introduce yourselves?
This is Andrew coming to you from Lynchburg, Ohio.
This is Cody coming from you also from Ohio.
And this is Kyle coming to you straight from the armpits of West Virginia. We are an indie gaming podcast. We all share a love for games. And you can check out our show on Podbean. Just search for Real Dudes Podcast. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, really any of the podcasting outlets that you like to use. Again, that is Real Dudes Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you love video games, you will love our show.
Do you like video games? Do you like to read? Alright, guys, I know that those two things usually don't go so well together, but my new book, The Minds Behind the Games, Interviews with Cult and Classic Video Game Developers, is kind of like an ESPN 30 for 30 collection of interviews with some of the coolest creators in video game history. We're talking iconic games, Deus Ex, Mortal Kombat, Wasteland, NBA Jam, not so iconic, E.T., Night Trap, indie games, Pro Wrestling X, Towerfall. If you love video games, you will love my book. If you know nothing about video games and want to get in the know, read my book. It's available wherever fine books are sold: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, and of course my site, patrickhickeyjr.com. It's an awesome book. I had a ton of fun writing it, and simply put, if you want to get in the know and you want to find out stuff that's not even on Wikipedia, check it out. You won't regret it.
Do you remember the days when console games were pure, simple fun? No loot crates, season passes or crowdfunding. You just paid for the game and it was yours to keep. You didn't have to sit through hours of boring cutscenes, and there were no loading screens to keep you from the action. At Four Horses Games, we remember those days and we aim to bring them back. Miles and Kilo, our latest release on the Nintendo Switch, is pure action from start to finish. Run, jump, slide and swing your way across 36 action-packed levels as you and your dog try to escape a haunted island, battling bosses along the way. Still need more? 20 tough achievements and a time attack mode keep you going that extra mile. Reviewers are saying that Miles and Kilo is a must-have title. Available now on the Nintendo Switch and coming to other consoles later this year.
Welcome back to the second half of this episode of Gamerheads. Joining us for this half is the illustrious Patrick Hickey Jr., an English professor, a former video game journalist, a voice actor of the infamous Relentless Rex and the Padre, and last but not least, the author of The Minds Behind the Games. Patrick, it's so nice to have you with us.
It's nice to be here too, but I'm still a video game journalist. I'm not a former. I'm a contributor to Old School Gamer magazine, and I'm the editor-in-chief of reviewfix.com, where I often review video games.
Oh, really?
And I still do a ton of video game interviews on ReviewFix. So, yeah, man, I'm like, I'm doing 1,000 different things at once. So.
Yeah, sounds like it. You're a busy man.
I'm
the
trying.
Renaissance man. A Renaissance man.
That's my boy, man. Like Teddy Roosevelt, when I was growing up, like I always thought he was like super cool. So now it's like I'm kind of like on my own mission to be like a fat, like middle class version of Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh man, well, welcome, Patrick. Yeah, for listeners, this is the second time you've been on our show.
Mm-hmm. The second time, yeah, I actually came back after the first time.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm surprised you came back after the first time.
Oh man, yeah, I had a blast the first time, and I think it was like right after the podcast was over, I messaged you guys, and I was like, "Yo, like I got more stuff to talk about." So yeah, thank you guys for having me back. It means a lot. So
yeah, well, thanks for coming back. So before we go into the book, because that's really what we want to talk about.
Fine, sure.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your voice acting career? How did you get into voice acting, and then how did you come about with Relentless Rex?
So what happened was I am on the good old fashioned Twitter machine like every day, looking for indie games to profile for reviewfix.com, and then also too just for Old School Gamer magazine, but then also too I've come across so many great games before anybody else knew what they were, like games like West of Loathing, Towerfall, things like that. So it's like I like to meet these people before like anybody knows who the hell they are. And I came across a really cool game called the Padre, and it looked like a priest walking through like this forest, and then this tree just like kind of like bitch slapped him, and it was a GIF or a GIF, whatever you want to call it, and it was in this like voxel, like Minecraft-esque kind of look, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm down to interview these guys. So I messaged them, and they were down. So like we did a email Q&A. I sent them about like 25 questions, a couple of emails back and forth, and I found out that I was the first person to ever really interview them. So we started talking, and they're like, their game wasn't even like an alpha or beta yet, Wow. It was still like pretty new, and they were like, well, do you want to like try like what we have? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So as soon as I started playing the game, I realized that like it was really cool and that I really liked it. And but the thing was, the grammar wasn't as strong as it could be, and the fact that it's a really story-based game, I told them, I'll edit your entire game, all the dialogue in your game. And they were like, okay, what do you want? So we talked, and we came to a mutually beneficial agreement, and now I'm a story editor on a game.
Crazy.
And
that's awesome.
My wife was like, this is cool, this is like something you always wanted, like like this is cool. I'm like, yeah, oh my god, like it didn't sink in. So then it's like every like day or so they're sending me more lines to edit, and it was just insane. It was so much fun. And then a couple of weeks before we went to Kickstarter, I think it was like maybe like a week before we went to Kickstarter, they were like, oh, our voice actor left. And I was like, that's cool. I'm like, I could do the voice. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So the guy's voice before, it was very professional sounding, but it was like, I'm just gonna be brutally honest. It was like Russell Brand, kind of. It didn't match. It was like this guy, like you're an English priest stuck in a mansion. And he's like, hey, like Russell Brand, wacky English man. Oh, Katy Perry dumped me. And it didn't match. And then I went in my man cave, and I was like, I gotta think of something for this game. And I've always done like the epic movie trailer voice. I love Pablo Francisco, and I heard him do it when I was about 17 years old, and I just mimicked the hell out of it until I found it, and I've been able to do it. I've been doing that voice for like 15, 16 years, so it's like, in a world, one man, the Gamerheads Podcast starring, oh my god, Neil Patrick Harris and Robert De Niro without the mole. And like, so I was like, it's an English voice. They're going for like that English voice. So I'm like, I love Jeremy Irons. Can't do his voice, but I was like, what if I tried to add like that dark, like malice filled, like Jeremy Irons, like emotion to that epic movie trailer voice. And in the end, I came up with it was Alexander the Padre. I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I'm singing Coolio now, Dangerous Minds. And Michelle Pfeiffer, she's hard, but only as Catwoman, not as a teacher. So, they heard it and they were like, yo, this is really good. And I'm like, awesome. So what do we do? And they're like, nah, man, you're the voice of the game now. And I'm, oh my God, holy crap. So I've helped write a lot of the lines for the game. And one of my biggest idols in terms of voice actors is Dana Snyder, who did Master Shake's voice in Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Mm-hmm. I was able to interview him about 12 years ago when I was just getting my start in journalism. And he said some of the best lines from Master Shake and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, he wrote, wow. He just ad-libbed, just came up with shit, Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I want to do the same thing. So I've added a lot of funny, interesting stuff to the Padre, and it was it's funny because when they heard my audition, they were like, you did something, because they had a couple of other people that they were trying to get voices from Fiverr and stuff like that. and they're like, you did something that none of the other voice actors did. And I'm like, what? And they're like, you laughed as the character.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was he's probably met his bitter end. And they were like, when we heard that laugh, we were like, oh my God, this guy is actually giving this character depth.
Yeah.
I wasn't just reading the lines and, not, because that's the thing. There's a lot of super talented voice actors on Fiverr, but it's they'll give you dialogue and be like, oh, the character's having sex, and they'll just be like, no emotion at all, Yeah. They just give you basic, and I wanted to just make sure that this was my first voice acting gig, and I didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. I didn't want to Rick Astley it, So I did that, and that game is out on Steam right now. It's doing really well on Steam. There's a lot of other plans in the works that I can't talk about. I spoke to the devs yesterday. I'm like, what can I say? What can I say? But it's a point-and-click survival horror adventure game, but they're also working on tank controls, keyboard controls. You can use the Xbox 360 controller on it, and it plays very different. It's basically like a spiritual successor to Alone in the Dark. I love the game. I've beaten it 30 times. It's stupid. It's funny. There's no jump scares, but there's some points where you're like, yeah, that was a little scary. Wasn't expecting that, so it's good. It's one of those games where, especially if you grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, where you're sitting in the lunchroom with your friends in school and you're like, how do you get past that boss? If you're one of those people that likes to have those conversations, then it's that type of game that you like. It's definitely a throwback in nature. So
nice.
The way Rex happened, to answer your question, finally, I didn't want to be a one-hit wonder, and I saw Rex. I saw the game online, and I am a complete sucker for hand-drawn games, cel-shaded games. So it's one of my favorite chapters in the book is the Wonder Boy in Monsterland chapter, just because the creator is so smart. He's the Bruce Lee of game development. He says something once the game leaves my hands, it's not mine anymore. Whatever you feel while you're playing, that's what the game is. And I'm not sure if you guys played the remake on the Switch or the PS4, Dragon Trap, but oh my God, that game is so pretty. It's so pretty. And when I saw Rex, it reminded me of a really beautiful Rayman meets TurboGrafx 16 platformer. So I reached out to Kevin Wins, who's the creator of Relentless Rex, and I love Kevin. Kevin is amazing. He's an amazing guy. He's done so much for me, and I don't know, to this day, I don't know why, because I absolutely annoyed the living crap out of him for 2 weeks. I'm like, bro, who you got? You got somebody that wants to do the voice? I could do it. And he was posting stuff on Twitter, and on Instagram, like voices that he wanted, like Kevin Michael Richardson, who I love, you know, the guy that did the voice in Candyman and stuff, like just all these amazing voice actors. And I'm like, if he could get those guys, that would be amazing for the game. And that's the thing too. Like, I just wanted this game to succeed because I just thought it was so pretty. But I just reached out to him and I'm like, dude, like, listen, I want to do it. And he's just like, oh, I would feel bad if you auditioned and you didn't get it. I'm like, no, like, I need to hear a no. Like, I need to hear a no, because the only other, you know, spot that I got, they loved it, and my head is like way too big right now. I need to either like get another job because I'm talented, or I need to be told, yeah, dude, you're only gonna do one game, and yeah, enjoy your little 5 minutes of fame, blah blah blah. So then I did the voice, and one of the inspirations was Kevin Michael Richardson's Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, mixed in with like a little Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it's like words like here, I say like yeah instead of, I can't even say here in that voice. Yeah, I'm over here. I'm on the Gamerheads Podcast. Yeah, I'm coming for you. I'm going to eat you. Yeah, you know, and he liked it, and I was like, oh my god, I may actually be like pretty good at this. So we did the trailer for his Kickstarter, and that was successful. And I talked to Kevin a couple of times a week, and like, I don't know what the plan is moving forward, but we're going to do some more podcasts together. And
nice. I
want to just help him in every single way, because the game is very much like the levels are being built and stuff like that. But in terms of story, he could basically do whatever the hell he wants at this point, you know, like he's got so much carte blanche. He's in such a good spot now. So, but the thing is, it kind of leaves me like, I don't know like what my next like thing is with the game, you know, but I'm definitely the voice of Rex. So, and that's the thing, Kevin is an amazing guy, super amazing guy, great father, great husband. Like, if you look at his Instagram, it's just like, is he really that happy? Is anyone really that happy? And yeah, it's the truth. He absolutely is. He's a super nice guy. So that's how Rex happened. And then just a couple of weeks ago, I got another gig with the Suspicious Ducks. They are an awesome like little indie game development company, and they're working on this game called the Caillou Offensive. And it's basically like a top-down version of Rampage. So it's like if Rampage had sex with the original Grand Theft Auto, like that top-down look, and it looks a lot like the original Grand Theft Auto, like that type of look. And you're just like this monster, and you're just destroying stuff. And I'm the narrator, so it's like when you lose, I'm like, loser. And if you win, I'm like, winner.
Wow.
And then we have they're working on a trailer right now, and that voice was inspired by, I forgot who it was, but it was it was like a robot voice from Fallout New Vegas. I forgot the name of the doctor. Like, he's a side character, and he just has like this voice, and you die, winner, you know. And
yeah.
They sent me the trailer, like that part of the game, and I love Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas got me through graduate school. Like, if that game wasn't around, like, I probably would have killed half of the professors in the CUNY graduate school of journalism. Because I remember after like my first week there, I was just like, I had already written for like the Daily News, the Syracuse Post-Standard. I got photos published in the New York Times. And the first week, it was like the military. They wanted to build you up, and they wanted you to forget about all that you did, and they wanted to build you up into like something much better, which they did. They did a great job. I love that school. But before Toys R Us closed down, there was a Toys R Us in Times Square, and I remember after like my first week, I was so miserable. So I rode the Ferris wheel in Toys R Us and had ice cream. Because I was so mad and pissed off. I wanted to just relax. I rode the Ferris wheel. I had some ice cream, and I bought Fallout New Vegas. And then I went home, and I just told everybody, like, don't call me, don't talk to me. And I played Fallout New Vegas for like 8 hours, like straight. I was just like, wow. Yeah. So when they said, oh yeah, we want this character to sound a little bit like this guy from Fallout New Vegas, I'm like, I'm gonna like these guys. So. Nice. So yeah, so that's since October, that's 3 games, and now I'm also writing the story for a game, which we could talk about later if you want. And I'm voicing one of the main characters in that game too. So the last year has been pretty insane for me.
Yeah. Wow, crazy. And on top of all that, you're promoting a book now.
Yeah, I'm promoting a book and I'm writing a sequel to the book. So it's like this book is where it all started, though. Because to be honest, like without this book was like a mega shot of testosterone for me. Like it gave me, like I'm 6'4", I'm 300 pounds, so I've got like pretty large cojones to begin with. But it was like after writing this book, it gave me so much more like energy, and it gave me so much more like drive to just say, you know what, I've always wanted to be involved in the video game industry in one way or another. And like telling these stories, I've learned so much from these people, so I'm kind of like an asset. Like I can tell people like, oh, you know what, like what you're going through is kind of like what this guy went through, and this is what he did to get through this situation, so why don't we try this, da 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 da. So it's like I tell people all the time when I work on a game with them, I'm not necessarily just necessarily the voice actor, I'm not just necessarily the story editor. Like I've got a wealth of knowledge that I'm willing to share. So yeah, I've actually been promoting this book longer than it took me to write it. It took me about 6 months to write it. Wow. Because I was writing like 6 to 8 hours a day, you know? So I was able to bang it out really quickly, but I've been promoting it since before I finished it.
Wow.
So because
That's
I just
crazy.
wanted, yeah, it's like when Beyonce is going to release an album, she doesn't wait until the day it comes out to tell everybody. Like people know 6 to 8 months in advance. So thank you, Beyonce. Like I tried to follow her her little marketing, strategy. But yeah, it just started off. It was like I'm a college professor by day, and I'm 35, and I started writing the book when I was 33. But it was just like it was kind of like my whole future was planned out for me. I've got this nice little entertainment website. I freelance from time to time. You know, I've got this job that I do very well, and I'm comfortable there. And I didn't like that. I like chaos. I like, I like things to be a little like wild from time to time, and it's like, man, I'm 33 and it's like there's a lot of things that I want to do, but I don't necessarily have to do them because I'm like settled. My wife was pregnant, so it's like everything, like the whole future is like planned out for me. That sucks. Who wants that? So I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I want to write a book. And my wife is great. My wife is like, if she was like a professional wrestler, her name would be like Sergeant Ass Kicker. Because she's the type of person where she's like, listen, if you're going to talk about it, like, I don't want to hear it. But if you want to do it and talk about it, then we can talk. Then we can have a conversation. So she's like, I don't want to hear I'm writing a book. I want to hear I'm writing it now, and this is what I'm doing. So I was like, all right. So within a couple of days, I was just like, yeah, boom, I'm going to do this. It's going to be an interview anthology. I'm going to interview as many video game developers about their projects and stuff and kind of put together a book. And it's going to be a coffee table book, and it's only going to be like 15 games. It's going to have a ton of pictures and blah, 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 blah. And then it's like the more people I spoke to, the more people said yes. So then it's like, oh my God, I went from wanting to write a book about 15 games to now it's 36. And now there's not as many pictures because there's so many words. So it's like, oh my God, it just turned into like this huge, huge passion project. And I love talking about it. I've been to like Long Island RetroCon twice. I've been to Brooklyn Geek Fest twice. I've been to like all of these different places speaking about it. I've been on a ton of podcasts, but none as good as this podcast. But it just it started from I'm not necessarily happy with the state of video game journalism as it stands. It's like somebody that I really look up to a lot is Danny O'Dwyer. Mm-hmm. That the no clip stuff, like he's awesome. Like he tells real stories,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want. It's like I'm not sure how well versed you guys are with like video game journalism history, but what happened to Jeff Gerstmann at GameSpot in like 2008 and 2009, that just like kind of broke my heart. Like I loved GameSpot, and I read a lot of Alex Navarro, who I still read from time to time. But when I found out like what they did with Kane and Lynch, it kind of like broke my heart. And then it's just like sometimes I play, because I get games to review every day, for my site, and there's a reason why there's not a lot of games like reviewed on my site. Like we probably review like 20 games a month, but because some of them it's just like, what am I going to say that hasn't been said already? If I can't add something new, I'm not going to, like, if there's a shitty game that's been sent to me, I'm not going to say, oh, you know, this game sucks, because then somebody's going to Google it and this game sucks is going to come up for 50 different sites and no one's going to read any of them.
Yeah.
So my whole goal in terms of like video game journalism is to like add real stories to the mix. For somebody to not be like, you know, ET sucks. For somebody to go, you know, that guy had to go through a lot of shit, like to make that game, and it works, and it sold 1.6 million copies. You know, like that's what I want people to say. It's like my students, my journalism students, my nephews, my friends. It's like I love them all to death, but for the majority, most of them are pretty stupid. You know, they'll take what they read on Wikipedia or what influencer on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and what they say, and they'll use that opinion as their own. And,
or just steal words from other people.
Yeah, or steal words. Absolutely. You know, so it's like I want people to look at the games featured in this book differently than they did before, or I just want them to look at them, because some of these games are great and nobody even knows what the hell they are. Like Squids just got released on the Switch, and I had a bunch of people tell me like, oh, I started playing Squids, it's actually pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, welcome to my life like 10 years ago. I knew that game was great 10 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the whole point. I don't know how successful I've been so far at it, but it's like I'm not going to stop. I'm already like 30 games deep into a sequel, and I plan to like release as many books like this as possible until like I'm too like, you know, lethargic to do it anymore.
Yeah. Well, I will say I think that's one thing that really captured me with this book was the fact that, you know, some of these stories, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize some of the things that these people went through, and you know, and the history too. Like, I think you do a really good job with talking about what the history of the time was as well. And we can go a little bit more about that, but I was thinking of like Night Trap, you know, and everything that happened around that game. And it's ironic that now that just got released for the 25th anniversary, and now it's on the Switch, which is you know, like crazy, right?
Yeah. I'm not going to say that was my plan all along, but I'm going to say that was my plan all along.
Yeah.
It happened. It was so funny because it's like Wonder Boy got remastered, Night Trap got remastered. There's a sequel for Toe Jam and Earl in the works. It's like the NES Classic made people care about a lot of these retro games. So it was like, this just happened at the right time. So I got super lucky.
Yeah. Or you had a pulse on what's going on out there. So.
That's what I like to think.
So your game or your book, you have, like you said, over 30 games. So what made you pick these games in particular for the first book? And I guess a follow up to that, have you played all these games?
Yes, I have played all of these games. Wow. I have about, I would say like in between 2,500 and 3,000 games myself across like 30 consoles. And the thing is too, it's like I probably play now probably like 2 or 3 hours a week. And I mean, but it used to be like when I was by myself and I wasn't married and stuff, like, oh my God, I was an animal. Like I would play all the time, you know? And the thing is, when I started really writing, I used it as research. Like, oh, well, how can I write about this? How can I write about Fallout if I've never played Wasteland? And how can I write about like Pokemon if I've never played King's Bounty and blah, 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 blah. So it's like I kind of like inadvertently made myself like this historian in a way, you know, and I love to have games in my collection that have stories behind them. Or like I could tell somebody, oh, why'd you buy this game? And I'm like, I'll tell you right now, I was in a really shitty mood. It was like 2004 and I had just done this and blah, blah, blah. And I went to a GameStop and I'm like, you know what, let me try this. Like, so that's the thing. I like for the games that I have in my collection to like mean something. So what had happened was, I'm not sure how well versed you guys are in wrestling, professional wrestling history and stuff like that, but like when Cody Rhodes, Dusty Rhodes' son, left the WWE, he made this whole like this whole list of like things that he wanted to do now that he was no longer like in the WWE. and it was like wrestle in Japan, wrestle in Mexico, blah, blah, blah. He came up with all of these, like this whole list, people he wanted to wrestle and stuff. It just really inspired me. Like, I'm like, this guy is already like super successful, but now he just made this whole new list of stuff that he wants to do. So when I was coming up with the idea for this book, I made a list, and crap, I should go in my man cave and get it. But should I? Can you guys wait like 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, hold on. I'm gonna get like the actual pad. It's on like Diablo stationery. It's freaking awesome. Okay. All right. So I made a list, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It was 13 things that I wanted in this book. And it's like, have several Atari 2600 titles featured, support the cult indie scene, have a Rockstar game, feature an awesome female developer, an NHL game, a game never released in the US, a game based on a comic book, a wrestling game, games that redefine genres, controversial / gritty games, great games no one knows, feature a Japanese developer, and an iPhone game that doesn't suck. So, so it's like I have like little checklists next to that, and next to some of these things on the list, there's like 3 or 4 check marks. So it's like I'm super proud of like what this book ended up becoming. So, but that's what happened. I sat in my man cave, and I was just like, all right, so now we need games. So I just started looking through all of my games, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if that developer is like still alive, or like, I wonder what that developer is even doing. I don't even know their name. So, Moby Games is an amazing site. So I would go on Moby Games, and I would look at the credits for these games, and I would start searching developers. And then again, like I told you before, it's all about like my cojones grew a couple of sizes right in this book, because I would just contact these people and be like, hi, my name's Patrick Hickey Jr. I'm a former NBC editor. I'm and I want to write a book, and I would love to feature you. And I sent out like 150 pitches, and 36 got back to me. So if you're not in journalism, you may say, oh, well, wow, 120 something people said no to you. It's not that they said no, they just didn't answer. That's what people do. It's like, it's a part of being a journalist. You have to be able to like understand that people are going to say no to you all the time. So
yeah,
it worked out really good. I've played all of these games. They've all affected me in one way or another. And there wasn't like one jerk developer in this entire group. They were all really cool, and I'm lucky because I've had, I don't want to say altercations, but I've like met developers before that I was like, yeah, I don't like you like at all. I remember I don't even remember the guy's name, and if he hears this, well, this is what you did. You did it to yourself. I was playing the Captain America game on PS2 at New York Comic Con, and it was like the whole like physics engine for that game and like locomotion system was just awful. So I did the interview with the guy, and it came out good, and he was a nice guy and stuff. But then it's like I'm actually playing the game, and it looks like Captain America isn't even walking on like a flat surface. Mm-hmm. Like it looks like his feet like aren't touching the floor.
Oh yeah.
And it was so Bush League. It was so PS1, and I'm like, dude, what is this? And he goes, what? And I'm just like, really? Like, really? This is the conversation we're going to have? What? You don't see that? Oh, well, the game's still in alpha and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's being released in like 2 months.
Oh my gosh.
So I didn't get any of those people for this book. Everyone was really open, and a lot of people were like, it was like the woman that did Fighting Force. She was like, I'm surprised you even want to talk to me. I'm like, shut up. I'm like, Fighting Force was freaking awesome. I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, oh, I'm just, I'm surprised. Like, I don't know if I belong in like with this group. I'm like, just shut up. Just shut up.
Wow.
You totally belong. You know, it's like I'm kind of going through that now with the developer for the second book, and he's just like, oh, well, I don't know if anyone would care about my story. And I'm like, dude, would you shut up?
Wow.
Like, this is like a PS1 game that Konami published.
Mhm.
I'm like, give yourself a little bit of credit. Like, I'm not a humble person at all. You know?
Really,
I'm like,
Patrick? You could have fooled me.
Yeah, you know? I'm not, you know? And, but this guy, he's like way too humble. I'm like, no, like, dude, you totally belong. Like, with all of these games. Oh my God, you're great. Jump into it. Dive into your greatness. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was that.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, you're talking a lot about kind of the stories that you want to tell about video games. And you mentioned earlier how you kind of want to add your voice to that space because you're not seeing a whole lot of the stories involved with developing these video games being told. So the question I had for you was, do you think stories like the ones in your book are going to continue to be told when video games kind of start to move towards extremely large studios where hundreds and even thousands of people leave their fingerprints behind on a game's finished product?
That's an awesome question. This is the thing though too. I feel like a lot of the great things that are going to come out of the video game industry in the next couple of years are going to be from the indie sphere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like if you look at the Nintendo Switch, like the first party games on there are amazing, but it's like I bought that system mainly to play like a lot of the cool indie games that are on there.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like people are starting to understand that you can tell great stories and you don't need like $1 million budgets and stuff like that. The last God of War game that just came out, that game you can't do retro. That game is like, that's like a Michael Bay film. That game is amazing. You need a lot of team to tell a story like that.
Yeah.
And I love that game. That game is freaking awesome. You know?
Mm-hmm.
But you can still create a magical effect in someone and get and create a sense of disbelief in someone's soul using retro graphics and a smaller team and stuff. It's like Celeste. I mean, playing Celeste, I totally felt things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like tugging at your heartstrings and stuff like that, you know? And that was basically like 2 or 3 guys that made that game. That was Matt Thorson and probably like 2 other people that helped him, you know? And I feel like that game's legacy in a couple of years, it's obviously never, like God of War is a monster. It's completely on another level. But they're going to talk about Celeste the same way that people talk about Super Meat Boy in like 5 or 6 years, you know? And it's like, the creator of Castlevania, he just went out and he created that new series.
Yeah.
Have you guys played it?
Bloodstained?
Bloodstained is amazing.
It's a good
It's
game.
an amazing game.
Yeah.
And it's totally different from what Castlevania is now. I would rather play Bloodstained than anything that Konami comes out with now that they call Castlevania.
Yeah. I've often said that Bloodstained is the best Castlevania that's not a Castlevania game.
Yeah. You know, so to answer your question, I feel like it's kind of like what happened to film in the 80s with like Sundance and later on the Tribeca Film Festival and stuff like that. The indie niche is becoming a bigger and bigger niche. And it's going to get to the point where it's going to become much more mainstream, and it's still going to be cool to have people make games with smaller teams. And that's the thing too. That's what I wanted to kind of get to in the second book, where I have a lot of games that came out with much larger teams. So I want to hear how that's a issue, you know? So it's like the first book, it was a lot smaller teams and stuff like that, but I'm diving into the bigger teams and how, you know, like, one of the people that I always wanted to talk to, and I sent him questions, and, I don't want to say he's confirmed for the book because until they send me the waiver back, I don't consider them confirmed, but I sent him questions and he's really cool. His name's Sanders Keel, and he worked on all of the WWE and WCW games on the Nintendo 64.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Yeah, so like I love those games. Those are some of my best memories as a teenager playing those games.
Yeah.
But he had a much larger team to deal with, and he was the producer, so he was kind of the guy that was in charge of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely want to hear how that played a role, like what his story is, you know? So I don't have a problem necessarily telling the story of a bigger game. I have a problem with not telling the story of any game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like kids will be like, oh yeah, Grand Theft Auto is awesome. And they have no idea like what went into Grand Theft Auto. And the beautiful part of the first book is it's very insular. And it's like one person that was like the guiding light and stuff. But it's like, I'll give you an example for the second book. One game that I can confirm is Loaded, which was a top-down shooter for the PlayStation 1, super bloody. Oh my god. Interplay published it, Gremlin Interactive developed it, and the game actually made my grandmother throw up. It was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, Grandma, you gotta see this. And she's like, oh, what is it? And I'm just like plowing through people and the blood splatting on the wall and stuff like that. But for that chapter, I have to manage 6 different sources.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
So like when that happened and all of these people started getting back to me from the dev team, like one was an artist, one was an engineer, one was a producer, one was this. It's like I said to myself, this chapter is going to be completely different from anything that I wrote in the first book. And I said, you know what? That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Because some chapters are going to be similar, like to the first book, like where it's going to be like 1 or 2 people. But now I'm going to have like some of these stories where there's 5 or 6 voices going on, you know, so I'm super excited for that. I just want to tell the stories behind games and let people know that there's so much more than like what they see on the screen. That's my biggest goal.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, Patrick, you were talking earlier about how video games are really near and dear to you, like Fallout New Vegas getting you through a sad weekend of a Toys R Us merry-go-round and ice cream all by yourself.
It was just that first week of graduate school, man. Oh, yeah. My God. Oh. Mm-hmm.
But I think in the introduction of your book, you also mention how the video games play an important role in some of your relationships, like with your father. I was wondering what made you kind of initially gravitate towards journalism and teaching when it came to participating in the video game medium that you love so much?
You know what it is? It's like I just never thought that world was something that I would be, I don't want to say welcomed to, but it's like lower middle class, white guy, Irish guy, first college graduate in his family. I just didn't think that was like a world that I necessarily like could have ever gotten access to. And I've always loved to write, and I've always had a very good memory. And I was always like, I joked around before, but it's the absolute truth that like I'm not a very person. But at the same time too, like when I tell someone else's story, I like to tell their story the way that I would tell it if I was telling a story about myself. So I'm able to kind of like switch gears and become selfless and tell the story like through their eyes with as much detail, you know, as possible. So it's like that absolutely lends itself to journalism, because good journalism, and I say good journalism, you don't ever say the word I. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's what pisses me off so bad when I read reviews on websites now, and I'm not going to name sites, IGN, where like the writer will say like, oh, I think this is a great game, but it's like, we already know that this entire article, that everything on this page is your opinion. You don't have to say the word I, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like I connected with journalism because it's like it allowed me to access another like part of myself, like the nice side, the selfless side, the activist, the one that was willing to sacrifice, you know, all of the things about me that a lot of people don't see. They just see like this big guy with a big mouth and stuff like that. But until I write about them and they're like, wow, you're using like that big attitude and that big mouth for me, you're defending me, or you're telling my story. So I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like prison in a way. If you're, you know, if like you're on my team, then like I will do whatever I have to do to like protect you and to ensure your safety and your success and stuff like that. And then if you're not on my team, well, then we'll meet out in the yard and I'll bring my shiv and you bring yours, you know? So But it's like journalism was like a way for me. I really love telling other people's stories, and I love telling people like what they missed and like what they went on. So what went on when they weren't there, and trying to do it in a way where it wasn't, you know, embellished or stretched or anything like that. To like let someone come to their own conclusion based on the information that I've given them. So I did a lot of sports writing early on, and then I transitioned into entertainment writing, and then I did both for a while, and I still kind of do both. I stopped writing at the hockeywriters.com last year, but I would still love to like get back into hockey writing at one time, maybe like when my daughter like gets a little bit older and stuff like that. But I just never thought that like I would be able to get into like the little sphere that I've gotten into now. So yeah, it just comes down to also I suck at math and a lot of development too. You know, like I don't know C++. I don't know like Unity. I have it installed on my computer for the game that we're working on now, but I don't dare like touch anything. You know, I like to think I'm a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, Christian, can I just jump in here for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead,
for a second. You know, one thing that I found fascinating, and even just you were talking about how it's not about you know, you're telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I think that I get frustrated with game journalism now is what the game journalist wants the game to be instead of what the developer intended the game to be.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's a trend that's been is pretty new? I mean, it feels like that wasn't always like that. I feel like now it's becoming more of about the individual who's writing it versus the game itself or the developer.
Because I think when games first came into like fruition, people didn't know what they were, so they just tried to like make sense of what they saw. You know, now there's actually like, let's just say a first person shooter is released. You know, somebody will go, "Oh well, it's not Doom," and you're like, but who said that it was supposed to be Doom? You know, like people,
right.
But that's what people do. So when there was nothing to compare something to, then you got a lot more honesty, you know? And now it's just like there's so many games out there that people are constantly comparing things to what they've already played instead of saying, you know what? And people, the thing is, it's kind of interesting because people do the same thing with music now. People do the same thing with movies. So it's like the fact that people are doing them with video games now just proves that video games have become such an entrenched part of pop culture that now people think that as soon as they play something, they've seen it already, which isn't necessarily true. And again, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I want people to know that what they're playing may not be exactly like the way it was supposed to be played, or maybe they think something about it that isn't true, you know. And the fact that we live in such a troll society now, where like everyone just wants to say bad stuff about things, and it's like I wanted this book to be mainly a positive one where I just talk about like what these developers were trying to bring to the table. And I didn't want to say, oh, this game is good, this game is bad, because there are some bad games featured in the book, but I don't say that because that's the thing too. They're good or bad in my opinion, but I don't want to share my opinion with you. I want you to experience it yourself, and I want you to come to your own conclusion, you know?
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, earlier you were talking about hockey and sports. Were there any other stories that you kind of wanted to tell that weren't involved in video games?
Well, like before, I was originally going to write a book on the emotional and like physical ramifications of a lifetime in pro wrestling. That was going to be my next book. And I've interviewed like easily over 100 professional wrestlers during my journalism career, from like Daniel Bryan, Diamond Dallas Page, Harley Race, Paul Heyman, Dolph Ziggler, like Rey Mysterio, like tons and tons of guys. Jeez. So I'm like, you know what, this is what I'm going to do next. And then just a funny thing happened where like developers that didn't get in contact with me in time for the first book emailed me like 8 months later. I'm like, oh, if you're still working on the book, like I'd love to talk to you. And I'm like, Yeah, the book's already out. And then it was like, oh, maybe I'll just write an article and make it like a tease. Like, oh, this is like what you could read in the minds behind the game, something like this. And then it's like 5 or 6, and I'm like, screw it, I'm just gonna write another book. Like, I'm gonna live another 40 years or so. Like, I got some time to write this wrestling book. You know, and then the thing is too, it's like, oh man, wrestling kind of sucks now. Like, oh, it's so boring right now. It's like, oh, I miss CM Punk so bad, and like, it's not sexy right now. So it's like I would rather wait until it becomes a little bit more topical and sexy and matters a little bit more, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I would definitely love to do that. I covered a minor league hockey league that only lasted like 1 year. It was totally out of the movie Slapshot. And I went on the road with the team, and the name of the team was the Brooklyn Aces in the Eastern Professional Hockey League. And like, I have so many wild stories about that team and about me, because that was one of my first beats by myself, like covering a team by myself, going on the road with them and things like that. That I would love to write a book about that one day too. So it's like I have a whole bunch of stuff that I would love to write. But for the foreseeable future, and I think honestly for the rest of my life, I'm going to be writing the minds behind the games, like books, like in this series, because I just feel like there are so many games out there that I'll never run. You know, I'll never run out of things to write. So the hope is, you know, to write 5 or 6 of these, and then start like putting them together and saying like, oh, you know what, we're going to take all the Genesis games, and like, oh wait, there's like 30 Genesis games. We're going to make just like a Genesis book, and then I'll go out and I'll interview like 5 like more Genesis developers to make the book like that much more special, you know. And then we'll do a Super Nintendo one. So that's kind of like my plan for the future.
Jeez.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, Patrick, you mentioned that you do not like where video game journalism is headed. Are there any other areas or facets about video game journalism that you are not necessarily fond of?
Oh, I think I told this story on another podcast, but I didn't get into it like as in depth. And I remember it was like covering WWE 2K14. 2K paid for me to fly out to LA to play the game and to interview like some of the wrestlers and the dev team and stuff. It was a great experience. 2K was amazing. They fed us. They paid for my hotel. Like, oh my, it was amazing. But it was like I did not go anywhere in LA when I was there. When I wasn't at an event like that they were hosting, I was in my hotel room writing. I wrote in like 4 days. I must have wrote like 12 pieces.
Wow.
I remember I felt like, because the thing is, it's like it must have cost like $2,000 to like fly me out there and back, my car, my food, everything. Like I had tickets to SummerSlam. I just felt so bad because I'm like, I'm not worth like this much money. Like, that's crazy that they paid all that. So like I reviewed SummerSlam like when I came back like from SummerSlam, like at the Staples Center. I walked back across the street and I went back to my room and I wrote up like a 2,000 word recap of SummerSlam for ReviewFix. So it's like I was writing articles for ReviewFix, Examiner, and NBC all at the same time to make sure that like 2K got enough coverage.
Jeez.
Like during those 3 days. And that's what I did, but there were so many journalists that 2K did the same thing for, paid to come out and stuff like that, that were like just getting like completely shit-faced like the entire 3 days. Like they were, oh man, it was really bad. It was like the day that we left, the shuttle came to pick us up, and like I almost missed my flight because like 2 bloggers / like YouTube personalities were like so wasted that they like they didn't wake up in time. You know, and when they got to the car, I was like, "You guys have a good time last night?" And they're like, "Yeah, man, I'm so wasted." Blah blah blah. And I looked like the kid in the eyes. And I'm like, "You're such a fucking joke. Like you have no idea." And like that's the sad place that like journalism is in such a bad place now, because like I went to graduate school for journalism. I went to college for 6 years for it. I teach it now. Like this craft is very important to me. The ethics surrounding it are very important to me. And it's like now everyone has a voice. Anyone can go out and create a blog. Anyone can go out and create a YouTube page. Anyone can go out and create a podcast and stuff, which is great. It's awesome because, I mean, after I graduated from school and, like, I couldn't get jobs, like, for local newspapers because there were none, I started my own sites and stuff like that. But I used all of the things that I learned in school to create, like, an identity and a reputation and credibility for myself. I didn't just go and, like, forget that, like, there's a whole process in the way that you do this, you know? And I just feel like there are so many people that they get into this and they get, like, YouTube famous and they get Instagram famous and they don't have the slightest idea in how important what they're doing is to, like, tons of kids and tons of adults that count on their opinion and think that their opinion is credible. I remember one time I was in this video game store that I hang out a lot in, and this guy came in, super nice guy, but he's got like 50,000 followers on Instagram, and I'm telling him about the book, and I'm telling him about like ET and stuff, and he had no idea. And I'm just like, you have 50,000 followers on Instagram. These people look at you to be like a voice, you know? And then it's like, as I'm writing the book, I'm sharing like games that are going to be featured in the book and stuff like that. And I'm telling like the story of, like, perfect example, The Fireman, which is in the book. And it's just this amazing game that never got released in the US. And it's like the post that I put on Instagram gets like 35, 40 likes. And then this guy goes out like 3 weeks later and does a thing on The Fireman about how great it is and gets like 10,000 likes. And I'm like, see, this is the problem. Like, this is the problem. Like, we're all so manifested in, like, likes and loves and shares and retweets and stuff like that, that it's like no one is saying, like, where they got their information from. No one is giving people the credit for their information. No one is, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the whole reason why I wrote this book the way that I did was I wanted these developers to have the avenue to tell their story. So it's like I have no problem with no one remembering my name for this book. I want people to be like, yeah, man, that book, The Minds Behind the Games, where like Howard Scott Warshaw and like David Crane, they told their story. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
You know? So, and I think a lot of journalists now, especially video game journalists, are so focused on sharing like what they know and how smart they are and how good they are turning a verse that they completely forget that they're telling someone else's story. That like a video game is art. And someone made a piece of art, and it's your job to dissect it and to kind of like share your experience with it with the masses. And it's not so much about like how cool you are and how many like views your piece got, you know. But that's kind of like where we are now, and it's kind of like a sad moment in journalism where it's like the quality of your work is secondary to how many views it gets, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think it's also interesting that you said that. The fact that I think that journalists now try to be like rock stars themselves.
Yeah.
At least that's kind of the sense I get.
Sure, I know. I completely agree. And I mean, that's not to say that I don't like to say I don't try and project myself as a rock star, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't post things like on social media to try and bring attention to like my brand and what it is I do. But it's like it's a fine line that you have to walk very, very carefully, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then you get people like Philip Meeson that, you know, got the dream job. I mean, seriously, this is a job that everybody, would love to have this kind of job. And then turns out he's been plagiarizing for a really long time. Yeah. It's just crazy to me to think about that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I have like all of these. One of the reasons why the book is important to me too is because all of like the techniques, all of the research that went into the book, like the Night Trap chapter, I listened to like 8 hours of like Senate grand jury testimony for that chapter. Mm-hmm. Like just to get as well a grip on like what was going on and like the pulse of the time. It's like I could have easily just went on, kind of gotten like what's it called, watched a YouTube video of it and saw what somebody else said and used their opinion, but I didn't, and because at the end of the day, as a journalist, you're not going to make a lot of money as a journalist. You'll make good money, you'll be able to support yourself, but most of the time you're not going to become a millionaire. And what you have at the end of the day is when you wash your face and brush your teeth, you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, I told the truth today. I told the truth. You know, but then there's so many people that what they like to do is they like to stretch things for more views, or they like to take information from other articles and kind of claim it as their own. And then the sad thing is that they do it so long that they lie to themselves and they believe their own bullshit, you know? And that's kind of like where we're at, like with journalism. And it happens everywhere. It happens like, I mean, aggregated stories. One person breaks a story and then everyone else just basically copies it and links to them and says, and that's basically okay. That's acceptable in online journalism, because as long as you're linking to the original source, then it's okay. But it's not, because people are going to read your story, which is basically stolen from somebody else, and they're not even going to click on the original link.
Sure.
You know? So one of the best moments that I had, like after the book came out, my editor told me that somebody from McFarlane, like my publisher, said that my book would be like an excellent like primary source of information for someone that wanted to write like a history of these games. And I said, well, they don't have to write a history of these games because it's in the book.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Right.
And I think that's a problem too with a lot of video game books that are coming out now too, because a lot of them are just reference style.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh yeah, let's just make a book and put like a ton of games and a ton of pictures and not add anything to it.
Yeah.
And that's, who wants to read that? It's like Brett Weiss, he writes a lot of reference books, video game reference books, but he's a journalist. He's been a journalist for 25 years and stuff. He wrote the foreword to my book, and he just released it Super Nintendo omnibus, and he had an awesome idea. He was like, what we're going to do is we're going to create 2 books that are basically, they're going to tell like what every single Super Nintendo game is all about. So each page is going to be like a Super Nintendo game. It's going to tell you like, you know, not the backstory of the game, but just like what the game actually is. And then I'm going to get like an industry insider or a writer to say how the game affected them. And I'm like, dude, you're a fucking genius.
Yeah.
I'm like, you just gave what you just did is you're going to do 2 things. You're going to do something incredibly journalistic where you're just going to be like straight. This is what Super Mario World is. This is what happens in the game. This is what you try and do. And then you're going to go that other way and you're going to be like ESPN 30 for 30 or whatever. And you're going to have somebody that's written about video games or somebody that's in the industry talk about how the game affected them. So now you're giving your book value, you know?
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of people that do that. You know, there's not a lot of people that do that. There's people out there that pump out books that have like no value, and then people that think that they're video game historians and people that think that they're video game collectors will put these books on their coffee tables and be like, oh, I have this book. Well, and it's like you skim through it and it's like there's nothing of value in it.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted my book to have value. I don't think there's like a throwaway chapter in the entire book. I think that like, and that's the thing too, you can read the book any way that you want, you know. You don't have to read from the first chapter to the last. And like, I just want you to like have I want it to have an effect on you, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone that's read it so far has said like, I didn't know that this happened.
Yeah.
Or I didn't know that happened. That's what I want. I just want us to be a little bit more mindful of all the things that went into these games. And then the thing was too, after the book came out, I did a little like, because I have a stupid little podcast, 3 Minutes of Geek, and I just rant for like 3 minutes about something. And I just said, I'm like, oh my god, I'm in such a bind because now this book is out and now you guys know everything that I know. So now I'm not cool anymore.
Yeah.
So like, what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I gotta write another book.
Yeah, I was gonna say write another book.
Yeah, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. And in your book's intro, you mentioned how your book, you want your book to mark a paradigm shift in video game journalism. Have you seen that paradigm shift begin to take place?
Oh man, no. No. I still read reviews on sites that are like just shit, you know, but it's like I'm doing my part. It's like I have like I'm the assistant director of the journalism program at Kingsborough Community College in Brooklyn, New York. And I have like 5 or 6 kids that like bought the book when it came out, my students, and they like want to do this. And it's just like, I'm like their master Yoda. And my goal is that like in 10, 15 years that these kids go out and they go and try and use like the tenets and things that I've created so they can like put their own mark. I think that's the only way that it's ever gonna happen. Mm-hmm. That like when they get older, because they're all 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, when they're 35, that some 20-year-old comes over to them and says that they want to do it, and then they give them the lessons that I've taught them. That's how it's gonna change, you know. Mm-hmm. Like I said too, I was super lucky that Brett Weiss wrote the foreword to my book. He wrote a book, it's like the 100 Greatest Video Games, 1977 to 1987. And I read that book, and I said to myself, I wanna write a video game book one day. So like being able to like get a guy like that had such an impact on me, write my forward, and then the fact that like he was working on this amazing Super Nintendo project at the same time, like he's going out of his way to help me, and he's having this huge effect on video game journalism that a lot of people don't know because he doesn't write for IGN, Kotaku, Game Informer, and stuff like that. But then you have somebody too like Leonard Herman, who's an amazing video game historian that like there is no opinion in his book. His book is called Phoenix. It's the history of the video game industry, and you could literally kill somebody with this book. Like it's like the Yellow Pages. It's a monster. Wow. And there's no opinion in it at all. It's just the history of the video game industry, and he speaks to so many people. And he's another guy that like he's had guest columns, and he used to write for like Electronic Gaming Monthly. This guy's a throwback. He's in his 50s. He's an amazing guy. He knew Ralph Baer, but it's like there's a whole bunch of people that don't have 5,000 followers on Twitter that are doing amazing work, and I feel like that's your shift. It's just at a level that like a lot of people don't see, because so many people will do a Google search for reviews of, you know, Fortnite or whatever, instead of like looking around and reading like 5 or 6 different reviews and seeing where they go up. It's like perfect example. The whole reason why I wanted to be on your podcast is because you guys do great work.
Oh, thank you.
It has nothing. Shut up. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with how many followers you have on Twitter. You guys have a nice following on Twitter, absolutely, but it has nothing to do with that. It's because I experienced like what you guys do. I listen to your show. I know that you guys are intelligent. You know, like I feel like if more people that read video game journalism did stuff like that, we'd be in a much better place. But that's asking a lot.
Wow. Thank you. That was a really nice compliment. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I'm blushing a little bit. So besides the folks that you mentioned there, who are some other people do you think that are leading the charge towards the journalism you'd like to see?
Like I said, Brett Weiss, Leonard Herman, Danny O'Dwyer. That's really it. To be honest. Wow. I mean, there are a lot of people that I read that I enjoy. Like I said, I really enjoy Alex. Jeff Gerstmann, A Giant Bomb. I feel like there was a time when like he could have an article that was about him stepping in dog shit, and I would have read it because he's just so good, and he still is good. But yeah, I feel like what happened at GameSpot, you know, like a decade ago, really like hurt. It really hurt like what my thoughts on video game journalism like were supposed to be. And I feel like the fact that it happened to him, he was the editor-in-chief of that site, and he was so infallible, like in terms of like his opinion. Like I trusted everything that he said, and I still do, you know. But like the fact that like management and stuff like that would go behind his back and like change like some of the verbiage of his review and change the score of his review because the developer gave them money for advertising. Yeah. You know, it just exposed this whole dirty side of video game journalism. It's like history. I love Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was an amazing president, aside from the fact that he tried to single-handedly destroy the Democratic Party and used our government's tax money to do it. you know? So it's like, if you can separate like the bad things that people have done from the good things, then you can still appreciate people. So there are a lot of video game journalists that I appreciate, but I don't think that I don't hold them in as high regard as I feel that like some others do, because I know like what they're doing.
Mhm.
Like when a game comes out from a big first party developer and it gets like a 6.5, I know that that's not a 6.5. I know that's like a 5, but that game has had banner ads on the site for a month, so they're not going to give it a 5 like it deserves. You know, so it's like I feel like there are a lot of people that get sucked into that big corporate like way of doing things now. You know, I would much rather go on an indie site that's reviewing games to find out like how they feel. But then at the same time too, you get a lot of young journalists that don't understand the fact that like, one, you shouldn't be paying for games to review. That's the first thing. And then two, the price of a game should have nothing to do with your score.
Hmm.
And if you're a really good video game journalist, you should not put a score next to your game.
Mhm.
Because you want people to read the entire article so they understand everything that you're trying to say. Because if there's a score in your review, people are just going to scroll down to the bottom,
Yeah.
they're going to see what you scored it, and they're just going to tell people, oh, IGN said it sucks, they gave it a 4.5.
Mhm.
See,
You know?
Christian, see, I told you, no scores.
Yeah, you did, Roger.
You're not going to get any traffic on your site, and you're going to be poor, but you at least have ethic. You know? So it's hard. It's
Yeah.
super hard. It's like I tell my students all the time, you're not a consumer guide. How much things cost shouldn't matter. And if you're paying for something, you can't be critical of it. It's super hard to be critical of something that you paid for.
Yeah.
You know? So then now the question is, Pat, then how do you get games? You write developers and you tell them, listen, I'm running a site. I want to review your content. Now, when I first started ReviewFix, it was a lot harder because there weren't download codes. People would have to actually send you physical copies, and they didn't want to do that, you know? But now it's all download codes. Who cares? They'll give you a download code for a game, you know?
Yeah.
So now, if you write them and you're honest with them, you're going to give me the code today. In a week, I'm going to have a review up, and I'm going to share it on my Twitter, on my Facebook, on my Instagram, on this, on that. And they say no, then that's fine. But if you reach out to enough developers, if you reach out to 100 developers and 10 get back to you, you will have games to review for the rest of the year.
Yeah. That's
But
true.
nobody wants to do that. Why? Because it's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they would rather go out and spend their own money than to go and do it the right way.
Mhm.
So,
yeah. Yeah. One thing that I thought was interesting too, I'm kind of going off of what you were saying there. Our friend at Four Horses, Mick Waits,
great guy.
He told me that there are actually sites, because people would ask, hey, can I review your game?
Yeah.
And there's people that would say, if you want us to review a game, you got to pay. You got to pay us to review.
Oh
it.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it happens. Oh, it happens all the time. So it's like it happens a lot in music journalism too. Because this is the thing. If you're getting 50 games a week to review, you're not going to be able to review all 50 of those games.
Sure.
But if they pay you to get to the top of the list, then you'll do it.
Yeah.
And then the thing is too, it's not free to run a site. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it, as long as it's not more than a nominal fee.
Sure.
So by nominal fee, I mean like $5.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. If you're reviewing like 20 games a month and you're doing that, you're only making $100.
Yeah.
And what that $100 is going to do is that's going to pay your server fee on like DreamHost or GoDaddy. So that's just going to pay to keep your site alive, and that's going to pay for you to continue to work. And the only way that you would continue to thrive through your site is if you actually got traffic.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like but there are, like with the Padre, we were reaching out to YouTubers. Some of these people wanted $1,000.
What? Wow.
Yes. Some wanted more.
Wow.
And I'm like, you could kiss the fattest side of the back of my ass for $1,000. Like, no way. You know, like we were trying to do so many interesting like marketing things. Like I would email, like I emailed PewDiePie And I sent him a video like, as the Padre, hey PewDiePie, I heard you've got a filthy mouth. I heard you got some sponsorships. Why don't you review our game, the Padre, a voxel horror smash, blah 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 blah. Like I sent those like individualized like pitches to like 30 different podcasters, to streamers. You know how many answered?
2?
None.
Oh, really?
Because they wanted money.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. So that's the thing too. And I want this to be loud and proud. I want this to be like sung like Julie Andrews on the hills of Austria in The Sound of Music. And I said it in my introduction. I did not pay any developer for their time or for them to tell me their story for this book. I did not pay a single one, and I refuse to. Even if they would have asked, and the best part, none of them asked. They just wanted to tell their stories.
That's amazing.
And I think that's probably one of the sexiest things in this book. It's like Kate Upton's cleavage. It's like absolutely perfect.
Put that on the back cover.
Hell yeah.
Well, Patrick, speaking more about your book, there's kind of a cohesive narrative that you tease out in the introduction and kind of runs through each of the developers' stories that you highlight throughout the book. What are kind of the main takeaways that you want someone to get out of the book, video game player or otherwise? And kind of how did you go structuring the book to kind of convey that message?
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What is this cohesive narrative you're talking about? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think in your introduction you kind of set up how all of these games are really labors of love and very time intensive and very labor intensive. And so a lot of these developers have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into these projects, and a lot of them just end up, getting lost to history or what have you. But there's a lot of interesting stories to be told that you are very happy to tell throughout the course of the book.
Yeah, you nailed it. I like you. You're a good guy.
He is a good guy.
Thanks, Patrick.
But no problem. But no, you're absolutely right. That was the goal, like to tell a lot of these stories. To kind of like, I had a woman approach me. If she's listening, then I'm about to blow up her spot. But she was like, "Oh, my son wants to become a game developer, and like I saw your book, and like, do you think that this would be a good book for him to read if he wanted to be a game developer?" And I said, "Absolutely, because he's going to see like what he's going to have to give up, the time, the energy, the relationships, like what he's going to have to give up in order to do that." And she goes, "Oh, that sounds great. How much is the book?" And I'm like, $40. And she's like, "Oh, okay, thank you. Have a nice day."
Oh my gosh.
So it's like you didn't really care enough about your kid to educate him. You would rather have him, oh yeah, he wants to be a game developer, but then you're not going to go out of your way to help the kid, like actually, like do that, And I feel like that's like the biggest job of a parent, is to be an advocate, But so that was the narrative. The narrative was to show like people that had a passing fancy in games, people that love games but wanted to know more, and then people that wanted to get involved in this, to show them like what these people had to give up in order to have the things that they had. And the thing is, when organizing the book, the chapter list just changed so many times while writing it. The only things that like didn't change was Mutant League Football was always number 1 because Mike was the first guy that got back to me.
Awesome.
So I'm like, that's going to be the first chapter, because Mike was the first guy that said, "Yep, I'm on board." And then the last was always Wasteland, because I told you I just love the Fallout series, so I wanted to end with that. And then 5 and 6 were always 5 and 6 because E.T. was developed in 5 weeks, and Boy and His Blob were developed in 6. But everything else was kind of like wide open. So I kind of threw some indie games like all together. I threw like the sports games closer together, but it was just like I threw the comic book games closer together. But the narrative was just to like try and be like, for there not to be any like letdowns. To have it kind of like flow, and like I tried to make it like which ones connected the best to each other. And but that is absolutely the overarching narrative of like, why is this game special? Like, what did this person do to like make sure that this game was unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I really liked about your book, because I mean, just walking by anyone on the street, like anyone you walk by, will have an interesting story to tell, let alone game developers who have put a significant portion of their life into a project. They're going to leave something behind in those projects.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite chapters was the Pro Wrestling X one.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I wasn't aware of his background. I didn't realize it was on a dare, basically. You know, he's saying, I wish we had a sequel to No Mercy.
Yeah.
And like, well, then do it. Okay, I will.
Yep. And $250,000 later, and you know, and it's still being developed.
Yeah. That was really insane. And then you followed up with the WWE games or WWF games on Nintendo. Like it was really good. I loved that. So
thank you.
Another story that stands out for me is the story behind E.T., because I was one of those people that bought the game while my parents were, I guess, when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize how involved Spielberg was in the game process. In fact, at one point, basically telling Marshall to create the game like Pac-Man. And I love his response to saying, well, I'm not telling you to make another The Day the Earth Was Still. Why can't your movie be that? You know, that was a good response. But do you think that we see that today, where like the creator or director of a movie is involved in the creation of the game adaptation of that movie? Or do you think it was just different back in the 70s and 80s than it is today?
Well, I think, thank God that or Allah or whoever you worship, that there are far less movie-based video games now.
Yes.
I think that's probably the best thing that ever happened to the video game industry. And I think one of the other things, and if you read the Doom chapter, there's far less ports. There's not like 25 different versions of the same game on 25 different consoles.
Yeah.
You know, and I think those things have helped the video game industry like establish their own credibility and stuff like that. But again, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, video games were still like this new thing. So a lot of these producers and directors, they wanted to have as much control because they didn't know like the effect that this game could have in relation to their art, their movie, their this, their that, you know? So I feel like now a director will say, okay, if you're going to make a video game on it, I know that like whoever you put in charge is going to like take the time and the energy to try and make something polished and solid. But back then they didn't know. They just thought it was a bunch of geeks like making something. Oh, they're going to ruin this and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I thought like that's why Spielberg was so involved, because he was trying to protect his legacy. You know, he did the same thing for Raiders of the Ark with Howard Scott Warshaw, and that game will be developed. That game will be discussed at length in my next book. I already have Howard Scott Warshaw has agreed to talk about how he worked with Steven Spielberg on Raiders of the Lost Ark for the Atari 2600. Sweet. And also too, there was a game on the Wii called Boom Blocks that sold about like 1.5 million copies, I'm pretty sure. And the developer of that game is going to talk to me for the sequel. And Steven Spielberg actually helped design that game too. Yeah. So between the first two books, we're going to learn a lot about Steven Spielberg and his passing fancy with the video game industry. But now it's like I'm not sure if you guys remember that game Stranglehold that came out on the Xbox 360 a couple of years ago, like 10 years ago. But John Woo played a role.
Oh, yeah.
So we're seeing that like as games go on now, like people that are not involved in the industry are coming in because they see it as a viable storytelling device. So if anything, I think that just the same way that the video game industry learned to police itself with like the rating system, they found a way to kind of like curb out like crap. and that's not to say that there isn't shovelware still.
Sure.
And that, you know, it's like I just got a game to review the other day that is on the Switch, and it's a goldfish fish scooper. So you use the Joy-Con to scoop the goldfish out, and there's no story, and it's just like there's like 4 different modes, and it's cute and it works, but it's basically like a tech demo that they're charging $10 for.
Sure.
Like my nephew, that's 9, he's going to be 10 soon. Like he would probably play it for like a half hour and go, "This is pretty cool." But then after that, like, but by then the $10 is already made, you know.
Wow.
So there's still crap coming out, but there's not nearly as much crap coming out now than there was. Like seriously, why would there have to be like 10 different versions of? I love Madden, and I hate to even say it, but seriously, like Madden 95. Does it have to come out on the Genesis, the Super Nintendo, the Game Gear, the GameCube, the Game Boy, like all of these different consoles? No, but they were trying to make money. And then the thing is too, what a lot of people don't know is it's not the same dev team for each version.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like one of the developers that I'm talking, he actually developed Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure on Windows 95.
Really?
And and the thing is, it's like it came out like a year after like the Super Nintendo and the Genesis version. But I'm telling you, if you play it on the Windows 95, it's like it's the prettiest version. It's like the best version of the game. But the thing is, what this guy was telling me, like in a couple of messages that we've exchanged, is like he was actually trying his hardest to make the Windows like platform like a viable gaming system. You know, like he put his heart and soul into like trying to make that the best version of Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure that he could, and he succeeded. But the thing is, it's like people will go, "Oh yeah, Pitfall on Windows 95 is probably exactly the same as it is on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo." And the fact of the matter is, it's absolutely not. The music is much better. The animations are much smoother. Like it's a much better game. You know. So again, I feel like the directors didn't know any of these things. The average gamer still doesn't know these things.
Right.
So I feel like over time, the gaming industry has found ways to like maximize like its success.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Well, Patrick, you mentioned like at the top of the interview, I think it was, that you're currently writing for a video game project. And that's something that fascinates me. And I was kind of wondering, how do you craft a story that takes advantage of the creative liberties that video games have to offer, while also kind of remaining reasonable to develop and kind of true to the vision of the final product?
Well, see, that's like the best part, because there's been some ideas that I've thrown out there and can't do that. That's not possible. You know, but most of it, they're like, "Oh, wow, we could do that, or we could do this." And I think the thing that helps me is like, again, if I was just like I have to say this the right way. I have a lot less respect for the average fiction writer than I do the average nonfiction writer.
Okay.
Because a lot of people think that they can write, and they go to Starbucks and they write all day. They make up stories and stuff like that, and anybody could do that. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's good, you know? But to write nonfiction and to be able to tell someone else's story, even the people that aren't so good at it, I would rather talk to them about writing than to talk to the average fiction writer, you know? So me taking this on was scary as hell to me, because I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to become one of those people. I don't want to become one of those crappy fiction writers. Like, I'm a nonfiction writer, but like I'm saying to myself, I just wrote a book detailing all of these development processes. I understand like what would make like a decent story for a game. I've interviewed all of these people. I've played thousands of games. I could do this, you know? So the way it happened, ironically, was I was on a podcast, and the host, Pete Paquette, he is a animator on Overwatch. He is also animated for games like Gladius, BioShock Infinite, Madden 18. This guy's he's done films like Ice Age. The guy's amazing. So after the podcast was over, he was like, "Oh, if you ever want to get in the video game industry, like, you know, we should talk." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I thought he was a great guy, and I was just like, "Yeah, you know, a lot of people, they just say things, you know." And then like 2 weeks later, he's like, "Do you want to talk?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So he laid out this whole idea that he had for a game, and it's kind of like this like intergalactic like space like first person shooter, like corridor shooter. You're on a spaceship and stuff like that. And he was like, "This is the idea. Now go play." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, this is the idea. Now go play. Now go create characters. Go do this. Go do that. And I'm like, what? But then like after like 2 or 3 days, I'm just like, okay. And I just jumped in. And then like once a week or once every 2 weeks or so, his brother is an excellent engineer too. His brother did this zombie game on Microsoft. Like it's kind of like the Microsoft version of the Oculus.
Mm.
He's an excellent engineer and he's super talented in Unity and stuff like that. So it's these two brothers and the Paquette brothers, Jeffrey and Pete Paquette. And so we have conference calls and we exchange emails and stuff. So I'll write like 1,000 words a week and I'll give it to them and they'll be like, all right, so this is good, but what if we did this, da 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 da, and then I fine tune and stuff. So I've named all of the characters. I've set like up the plot, and it's one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done so far. And like they started like laying out some of the levels and animating some of the characters, and I'm also voicing a character in the game. So to see like my voice attached to this character is awesome too. So I think without writing this book, I would have never have been in the same like internet signal as Pete Paquette. I think we would have never met. So I think like writing this book, I got a huge understanding of like game development and people in the industry and what it takes, the sacrifice that you have to make in order to do this. So I feel like I'm well armed to stay the course and to like make sure that this game is finished. And that's the thing too. It's like it's just a matter of like being realistic. You know, it's any fiction writer could be like, oh, we were in the land of blah 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 blah, and it's just like, is anyone gonna even like give a shit about that? And I think like being a nonfiction writer, you're writing about like, because truth is always better than fiction, you know. So I think I'm writing a lot of this plot from the point of view of like a guy that is on a ship that has been taken over by a hostile force, and he's either gonna live or die. And he has to do whatever he has to do to like make sure that this I don't want to give away too much of the story, yeah. But he has to make sure that like whatever has overtaken this ship doesn't get out, and that he does. So it's kind of like you guys ever play the Alien arcade like shooter before? So it's like if that had sex with like the first Die Hard and like Contra.
Yeah.
But with like a low poly look that is kind of like reminiscent of like 70s like sci-fi like Battlestar Galactica and stuff.
Okay.
Sure.
You know? So it's got an awesome score. There's so many things that I can't announce yet. The name of the game is Treason in Space. You can go to treasoninspacegame.com. So you can look at like character design and stuff like that, and some blog posts from Pete where he's talking about gameplay systems and stuff like that. And it's like it's low poly, so it looks like cel shaded. It's got this really cool look and stuff. But that's all like a lover of games and a journalist that's written about games, and two brothers that have been in the industry for like 20 years. So like that's, you know, and then like we're going to have a lot of people that are going to be involved that have worked on projects like The Last God of War, Sunset Overdrive. So like we're going to have a talented team like helping us. So, and again, a year ago, if you would have told me that this would have happened a year ago, I would have said that you were crazy. Yeah. And it's all about like not being scared to hear no. You know, it's like when these guys told me that they wanted to write the story, that they wanted me to write the story, the first thing I said was like, I don't want to be like the bitch of this trio. Like these guys could say, oh, well, I've worked on this for Microsoft and I've done this, and I go, well, I wrote a book and I did voicing for one indie game. I was like, no. So that was one of the reasons why I reached out to Kevin Wins from Relentless Rex, and that's why I reached out to the Suspicious Ducks to do the Caillou offensive and stuff. So because I wanted my bio to look as impressive as theirs. I'm still on my way, you know. But the thing is, it's like if you're trying and you're working every single day, you're gonna get to where you want to get eventually, you know.
Yeah.
So it was like this book too. It started off with like an email to like 5 or 6 developers. And I was like, you know what? If half of them get back to me, then I'll have enough to write a book. And I put tender love and care in each one of those pitches, and all 6 of those guys got back to me. Wow. You know? So You know, when we think of greatness, we think of moments. You know, like, oh, the time when Michael Jordan hit that shot, you know, and like he jumped up in the air and clenched his fist and stuck his tongue out and blah, 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 blah. But the reason why we remember Michael Jordan is because he averaged 30 points a game for 12 seasons.
Right.
It's consistency. It's not one particular moment, because consistency is consistently coming through in the clutch. You know what I'm saying? It's like the guy that just catches one ball, like Dwight Clark. He caught that pass from Joe Montana. We remember Dwight Clark, remember that catch, but we remember Joe Montana forever because he was great for a really long time. You know, so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm 35 and I'm trying to like just be consistent and like establish myself in this world and write books and do voices and be honest with people. And I hope that I'm on my way. Yeah.
Well, I for one think that this book is great, and I think you're well on your way. I'm 41, so you're beating me. I will say that this book is great. In speaking to you through the podcast and just, you know, correspondence, it's been really inspirational as well. So
thank you.
How can people get your book?
So it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes & Noble, Target, it's on Walmart. If you want a personalized copy, you can go to patrickhickeyjr.com, and then there's a little link, like the minds behind the games. And I will autograph your book. Also, too, like I've had people. I'm sorry, like you're from where are you from? You're from
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, yeah. I was gonna say, and I was looking through like my man cave, and I was like, I have to have like a Packers like football card or something, because like I always sneak in something cool. So like I had somebody buy the game the other day, and they're from Pittsburgh, so I threw in like some Pittsburgh Penguins hockey cards and stuff like that, and I'm like, I can't believe I don't have like a what's it called, a Packers football card, like an Edgar Bennett or something like that, something. You know, like I'm like, that would have like totally made his day. So I just signed like 5 or 6 bookmarks for you and shoved that in there. But no problem. But it's like, that's what, if you order through me directly, I always do something like that. So like I'll autograph the book, I'll say something nice, and then like I always put something in there for you to like remember me a little bit, because that's the thing too. It's like I've been to book signings before, and I've seen the way some authors are, and they're like, yeah, next, give me your money, next, give me your money, next, and I don't ever want to be like that. So yeah, all the big chain stores have it. But yeah, if you order through me, it'll cost you like a little bit more, because I have to pay for shipping and taxes and stuff like that. But yeah, you get something personalized, and it's really cool.
Yeah,
nice. And yeah, thank you so much for letting us have the digital copy, so that way we can read it ahead of time and
absolutely.
Speak. How can people get a hold of you?
So I'm on Twitter at a review fix. I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/Patrick Hickey Jr. That's also my Instagram handle. Patrick Hickey Jr. at gmail.com. I talk to everybody, you know, and it's like, if you're somebody that like wants to get into this, then I'll be honest with you. I had somebody the other day, and like I told you before, it's like prison rules. If I love you, I stick up for you and stuff. And somebody commented on Brett Weiss's Facebook page, and they were like, "Oh, so what are your qualifications for writing this book? Like, what college degree do you have?" And I told the guy, I was like, who cares if he went to college or not? That guy has been a journalist for 25 years. He's written for like a ton of newspapers. Like, he knows a lot of people, like, you know. So then I messaged the guy that I didn't know, and I messaged him, and I'm like, dude, if you want to do this, like, I'll tell you like what you need to do. And I'm like, one of the first things that you shouldn't do is shit on people that could absolutely help you. I'm like, Brett Weiss is an awesome guy. I'm like, he didn't know me from a hole in the wall, and he wrote my foreword. You know, and now we talk all the time. He's a great guy. I'm like, so if you want to get into this community, I'm not telling you to kiss anybody's ass, because I don't do that, you know, but you got to ask questions in a different way, you know. So it's like, if somebody's interested in getting in video, they want to be honest with them, or if they want to be honest with me and tell me what they think of the book, I could take it, you know. So it's like, shoot me an email and we'll get the conversation going. That's what I'm about. Like, I wrote this book because I wanted there to be more meaningful conversations about video games. instead of this sucks or this is great, you know?
Yeah.
So if you want to email me or message me on social media and you want to start a conversation, then let's talk.
Nice. Yeah, and I will say, I like that because that's actually the reason we started this podcast, to talk, have more meaningful conversations about video games than just, you know, this is a game, this game sucks or whatever. You know, we try to have more meaningful conversations, and people hopefully walk away from podcasts and have thoughts about things and have discussions at water coolers about what we talk about. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much. And when the second book comes out, we'd love to have you back on the show. We'd love to keep in touch with you as well.
Absolutely, man. I would love to talk to you guys again.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much. And listeners, go out, buy the book. It is well worth your money. It is a fantastic book. You really, if you love video games and you love the history behind games, or if you want to learn more, you have to get this book. It's fantastic. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and Gamerheads out.